Chapter 883. When Qing Yanluo saw that Chu Qingyan's eyes were red and her lips were red, she knew what she had just experienced. However, it seemed like she didn't succeed. "Hey, does your big ice cube really have a heart of stone?" She poked Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan propped her cheeks with both hands and nodded helplessly. Then she shook her head. Qing Yanluo couldn't figure out what she meant. "Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me." Chu Qingyan sighed bitterly and said, "He's just trying to keep me in suspense." "What can I do?" Qing Yanluo giggled. "I think your big ice cube is the only one who can deal with you." Chu Qingyan saw that Qing Yanluo didn't comfort her and instead mocked her. She couldn't help but huff, "You're still laughing. If I can't stay, don't think about accompanying your hollow." Qing Yanluo coughed softly and immediately turned to check on the injured. At this time, it was better not to provoke the little lass. At this time, Hualing and Su Yi returned with their men. Although everyone was present, many of them were injured to varying degrees. Hualing walked towards his master. When he saw that he wasn't injured, he sighed in relief. However, when he saw that the person who shouldn't be here was standing in front of him perfectly fine, his anger rose again. Why was the young princess consort here? He originally thought that Su Yi and the others were sent by the young princess consort to protect his master. He didn't expect that the real master would also be here. He secretly gave Chu Qingyan a thumbs up. Chu Qingyan caught it out of the corner of her eye and winked at him. Hualing immediately stood up when he felt the cold gaze on him. He then reported to his master what had happened in the village. At this time, Su Yi and the others also walked to their master to report. Chu Qingyan saw their injuries and her face immediately sank. "Go to Ethereal and Yanluo to check on their injuries first. Treat them first." Everyone nodded and dispersed. Only the lightly injured Su Yi remained. "What happened?" Chu Qingyan asked. Su Yi reported, "When this subordinate and Su Er went to the village, we found that Hualing and the others were also there. In order to avoid meeting them, we hid first and watched them go in. Originally, we wanted to wait for them to come out before we acted, but we didn't expect that the villagers would suddenly take out their weapons and attack Hualing and the others. So this subordinate asked Su Er to come back and report to you first. The other side had too many people, but with our reinforcement, the other side didn't take too much advantage. Later, someone appeared and called the remaining assassins away, so we came back." "What about the original villagers?" Chu Qingyan felt that something was amiss. "They were all killed. The killer disguised himself as them and set up a trap." Su Yi showed a trace of pity. Chu Qingyan closed her eyes. "What a sin." Over at Xiao Su's side. "You're saying that someone called the assassins away?" Xiao Su frowned. "Yes, otherwise this subordinate's people would have been delayed for a long time." Hualing replied truthfully. Xiao Su pondered. "At that time, it should be the little guy who killed the leader of the assassins, so those people stopped in advance." "Master, what should we do now?" Turan asked. Xiao Su glanced at the scene. The situation was not very optimistic. He waved his hand and ordered, "Find a clean place to rest for the night." "Yes." Turan and Hualing both took the order and retreated. At night, everyone made a fire by the stream. Because this time, the enemy who was hiding in the dark was defeated, so they were not worried that they would come to find them so soon. The dry food was finished. When they went to the village to buy food, they encountered this incident. So Xiao Lai, who was not injured, took a bow and arrow and went into the deep forest to hunt a few rabbits and pheasants. Jin Xian also went into the water to catch some fish. Chu Qingyan and Qing Yanluo helped to pluck the feathers and clean them, then roasted them over the fire. It was not that they could not do this normally, but they could not be distracted on the road, so it was faster to eat dry food. The fragrance of the meat quickly spread. The few who were punished by Chu Qingyan to look at the stream immediately turned their heads. Hualing was helping to apply seasoning. Seeing such an interesting scene, he could not help but ask with a smile, "Little Princess Consort, what did they do?" Cheng Yenluo was laughing at this moment. Hearing that, she answered for Chu Qingyan, They dropped the ball at the crucial moment, so the little girl is punishing them. Jean Xian continued from the side, they ran away when they were resting. Coincidentally, something happened, so Master brought us here. Now that the dust has settled, they came to find us. These words made everyone present unable to restrain their laughter. Xiao Hai and the others immediately blamed Jean Xian. No one will think you are mute if you don't speak. Look, so many people are laughing at us. Su Yi smiled, Master, they helped us catch a lot of fish and birds just now. Please forgive them. Because these few had been causing trouble in the residence all day, Xiao Qi helped to watch over them, so Su Yi and the others also had feelings for them. They could not help but plead for leniency on their behalf. Hearing this, Xiao Hai and the little troublemakers turned around and looked at their master with watery eyes. Chu Qingyan gave a cold snort, and they immediately turned their heads away pitifully. Master was really angry, what should they do? Actually, Chu Qingyan was no longer angry, but she felt that she had to set some rules for them. Otherwise, if they were to be so lax every time, if an accident happened in the future and she was not by their side, then they would really have no one to help them. Seeing that the punishment was more or less over, Chu Qingyan still waved at them with a stern face, come here. When the few heard this, their hearts almost bloomed with joy, but they could not express it too much. Otherwise, they would have to look at the stream again. They walked over with their heads bowed, but their eyes would occasionally glance at the fire. This pitiful and cute appearance was simply too adorable, but the people did not want to give food to them. After all, there was still the big Buddha, the young princess consort, present. Moreover, they were very curious about how the young princess consort would train these seemingly powerful birds and beasts. This scene was very rare. How could Chu Qingyan not know what they were thinking? She casually picked up a roasted chicken and played with the fork, waving it in front of their eyes. When she saw that she had attracted all their attention and made them drool, she said, "Let's go." Do you remember what I said? They nodded. Are you still going to run around? They shook their heads. If you continue to make people worry, you will go back to Jiangnan? They nodded. Chu Qingyan then handed the roasted chicken to them, it's good that you have remembered it. Take it and eat. As if they had been pardoned, the few of them happily took it. Others even gave them fish, and they accepted it reservedly because their master said that they had to be polite. Then, they ran to the side and ate heartily. After finishing these few, Chu Qingyan took another roasted chicken and walked in front of a certain someone. She grinned as she came to his side and handed him a large drumstick. A certain someone glanced at her hand and said faintly, "This is the second one." Chu Qingyan did not understand, but then she quickly understood. Big Ice Cube was jealous that the first one she roasted was given to Little Hai and the others. This vinegar was too ridiculous. Chapter 884. This kind of night was quiet and peaceful. If they hadn't experienced that battle, it would have been a beautiful day. Chu Qingyan ate meat and looked at the night sky. She sighed, if only we had wine now. A good night should be paired with good wine. As soon as she finished speaking, a chestnut fell on her head. She immediately covered her head and turned to glare at the person beside her. You're not allowed to drink. Xiao Su glanced at her coldly. She wanted to refute, but remembered that he still had her life in his hands. She rubbed her nose and didn't argue anymore. Xiao Su stared at her for a while, then reached out to caress her face. Chu Qingyan was stunned. She quickly whispered, don't. There are many people watching here. He shook his head helplessly after she finished speaking. He had already retracted his hand, but there was an extra fish bone on his fingertip. She must have accidentally touched it just now. She blushed with shame at her own thoughts. After a while, she suddenly thought of something. She immediately put down the meat and said, Big Ice Cube, don't you think that the ambush this time is very strange? Tell me. Xiao Su didn't expect her to suddenly mention this matter. He leaned against the tree trunk and looked at her. Chu Qingyan immediately said, think about it. If you didn't go to Jiangnan, you should be in Lian City. Sun Quan also secretly came to Jiangnan to announce the imperial edict. Logically speaking, even if those people wanted to ambush you, they couldn't have done it here. Moreover, they calculated the time and waited for you in advance. Continue. The corners of Xiao Su's eyes lifted slightly. His gaze deepened. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan was motivated. She thought that if she analyzed it well, maybe the big ice cube wouldn't send her back. The people who came to assassinate you are from Nansang, but they can't be so familiar with Sichuan's terrain to specially come here. I'm guessing that Nansang already knew that you weren't in Lian City, or that someone leaked this matter to them. That's why they could calculate your route so accurately. She took her time to analyze it. If it's the former, then we can only say that Nansang's reach is too far. They can clearly see our every move. If it's the latter, then it means that someone knows our whereabouts. They're keeping it a secret and are waiting for this moment to make their move. This is simply too terrifying. Xiao Su fell into deep thought because of her words. The little fellow's words made some sense. He was also guessing the intention of the person behind today's incident. The assassins who came this time were brazen. It would take some time for them to come here, not to mention coming here from the front lines. One thing that the little fellow did not expect was that these people would set off at least earlier than the imperial edict. Who was it that had guessed Xiao Ran's defeat from the very beginning, as well as that imperial father would have him accept the imperial edict? What was the motive of the person hiding behind this? Was it to help Nansang go against Sichuan, or did he have other motives? If it was purely to go against Sichuan, then he would be able to block soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir without any worries. He was afraid that it was not as simple as he imagined. Seeing that Xiao Su was deep in thought, Chu Qingyan did not say anything to disturb him. Instead, she sat quietly at the side, occasionally tearing off a piece of meat to feed Xiao Hai and Xiao Fan. At this moment, Cheng Yenluo was washing gauze by the stream. Her mind was drifting away, and no one knew what she was thinking. When she came back to her senses, she realized that there was a reflection in the water. She subconsciously turned around and saw Ethereal dressed in white. She was momentarily stunned. She did not know how long he had been standing behind her. For a moment, she did not know what to say, so she silently lowered her head and washed the gauze over and over again. Xiaoyan, why are you and the young princess consort here? Ethereal saw that her back was facing him, as if she did not care about his appearance at all. His heart sank, and he did not control his tone well, blurting out his thoughts. Cheng Yenluo's hands paused, and she felt a little guilty. She was afraid that he would ask about this matter, so she was thinking of an excuse to get away with it. Perhaps she took too long to think, so Ethereal thought that she did not want to talk to him again. His heart ached, and he gave up asking. His tone became calm again. Didn't I tell you that the battlefield is not a place for children to play house? A white knife goes in and a red knife comes out. You may die in the blink of an eye. Master will let the young princess consort go back. At that time, you will go back with her. After saying that, he turned around and was about to leave. However, the person who had been silent all this time suddenly stood up. She lowered her eyes, and her long hair fell down to cover her cheeks. Her expression could not be seen clearly, but he heard her snort softly, and then her voice was cold. Murongju, aren't you thinking too much? I won't deny that this little girl came for your master, but I didn't come with her for you. I'm a doctor, and I treat all kinds of diseases and illnesses. Wherever I go, I'm just fulfilling my responsibility as a doctor. So, don't think too much, and don't drive me away. When the time is right, I will naturally leave. Her cold and emotionless voice was like a sharp ice sword piercing into his heart on this hot and dry night. He smiled bitterly. Sure enough, he was thinking too much. He still thought that she was, that was why he came here to say those words, but he did not expect that he would drive the two of them apart again. But other things aside, he could not allow her to stay in such a dangerous place. Xiaoyan, no matter what the reason is, I will not neglect your safety. Tomorrow, I will ask Master to send you back. Ethereal said and turned around again. Murongju, you can't be so selfish. Qing Yanluo gritted her teeth. With his back to her, Ethereal looked up at the night sky with the moon and sparse stars. His expression was lonely, but his tone was very determined. Xiaoyan, you can blame me or blame me, but I won't let you be willful in this matter. After saying that, Ethereal walked away. After he left, Qing Yanluo clenched her hands. Her drooping hair covered her pair of painful eyes. She did not want to say those hurtful words, but in order not to let him see through her, she did not mean what she said. But she did not expect that he would still do it. Her heart was in a mess. Why did she insist on the answer in her heart? She should stay far away from him. It was already late at night, and the forest was very quiet. Xiao Su covered the person sleeping beside him with his coat. Although the night in the mountains was very cold, there were 3 small snow wolves lying beside her. Their fur was warm enough to keep her warm. At this moment, Hualing stood by the side and glanced at the sleeping young princess consort. Then he asked in a low voice, Master, are you really going to send the young princess consort back tomorrow? Do you really want her to stay? Xiao Su looked at him. Hualing scratched his head. This subordinate thinks that with the young princess consort by your side, your heart will be more at ease. In fact, he wanted to say that the person who wanted the young princess consort to stay the most was his master, but he had too many concerns. When was this prince's heart not at ease when she was not around? Xiao Su narrowed his eyes and said in a stern tone. Chapter 885. His master's eyes were as indifferent as ice. Hualing's thoughts were instantly extinguished. He swallowed a mouthful of water before stuttering, this subordinate thought too much. After speaking, Hualing retreated. Turan saw him come back with his tail between his legs and couldn't help curling his lips into a smile. Hualing had kicked an iron plate in front of his master. Seeing Turan teasing him at this time, he wasn't worried. What are you laughing at? Could it be that what I said wasn't what you were thinking? Turan was still smiling. Even if you're right, I wouldn't be so stupid as to go find Master to say this. You clearly know that Master values the little princess' safety more than anything else, yet you still went to ask for trouble. Although he felt that what he said was reasonable, Hualing was still angry at this time. He snorted in dissatisfaction. What's so good about hiding it? I just want to see Master go to war without any distractions or regrets. Hearing this, Turan smiled and shook his head. You've been with the little princess for so many years. Don't you understand her personality? Master told her to stay in Jiangnan, didn't she still follow? Since the little princess dared to come, do you think she wouldn't be prepared? These words hit Hualing in the head. His eyes immediately lit up. You're right. I really forget everything when I'm anxious. Turan restrained his smile and looked at the 2 people lying and sitting under the tree. They were like a pair of jade. In the past, he couldn't understand why his master, who had always been indifferent to others, would treat the little princess differently. Later, he didn't insist on the answer because he found that he was used to seeing his master and the little princess together. Just like this time, he also wanted the little princess to come with him. His master's life was too sad. Only when the little princess was here did he have a trace of life. He had rejected her in the past, but now he was grateful to the heavens that there was such a person by his master's side. Turan withdrew his gaze and didn't pay attention to Hualing's happy jumping. He turned around and took up the task of patrolling. The only thing they could do was to protect the safety of the 2 masters. The firelight illuminated the face of the person under the tree. Xiao Su lowered his head and looked at the person who was slowly approaching. In the end, he didn't want her to be restless, so he took her into his arms. When the sleeping person felt that he had fallen into a safe and familiar embrace, he naturally found a comfortable position and fell asleep without caring about anything else. Xiaosu saw that she had finally quietened down, and his tensed face finally relaxed. His gaze fell on her body, and her long black hair covered the side of her face. He couldn't help but reach out, revealing her bright and beautiful face, and then gently caressed it. In fact, when she appeared, he wanted to do this, but he couldn't let her discover his emotions. Otherwise, she would be fearless and want to stay. He sighed softly. "Little fellow, what should I do with you?" She couldn't bear to let go. Only by keeping her by his side would he feel at ease, but his side was already a mountain of daggers and a sea of flames. A person, in the face of right and wrong, could they only be selfish once before they could be selfless for the rest of their life? Xiaosu looked at the sparse stars in the sky and the light in his eyes flickered. The sleeping person had a frown on her face. Ding, ding, clang, clang, the sound of swords clashing could be heard everywhere. There were roars, cries, and screams. Chu Qingyan stood in the middle of the crowd with a blank expression. She didn't know how she came here, this was clearly a battlefield. Everyone was fighting with all their might. Some had fierce expressions, some had painful expressions, some had proud expressions, and some were screaming pitifully. She didn't know who was fighting who, but she quickly saw the flags in the crowd. The two words South and West. Her eyes opened wide. This was the battlefield between the southern blue continent and Sichuan. At this time, she saw Turin leading a large number of troops on his horse. She also saw Hualing swinging his sword. Could it be that the big ice cube was nearby? She didn't think too much about it and immediately ran towards Turin, but when she took a few steps, she found that the soldiers on the side had passed through her and were stabbing at the people behind her. She was stunned. Everyone acted like they didn't see her as they passed through her body. She tried to speak, but there was no sound at all. What was going on here? Before she could react, a battle horse appeared in front of her. The most important thing was the person sitting on the horse. He was wearing a silver battle robe and had a silver mask on his face. He wasn't angry, but he was like a sword that had just been unsheathed. He had an arrogant aura and killing intent. Her heart filled with joy and she wanted to run towards him, but at this time, an arrow flew through the air and appeared behind him. She immediately shouted for him to be careful, but she forgot that she couldn't speak. The arrow pierced his back and came out of his chest. Everything happened too quickly and she could only watch as he fell down. No, everything was asleep except for the cicadas and crickets that were tirelessly chirping in the fields. When Chu Qingyan opened her eyes covered in sweat, the first thing she saw was the dark sky. Then she turned her head and saw a figure that made her feel at ease. So this was a dream. Luckily it was only a dream. But why would she have this kind of unlucky dream at this time? Could it be that it was a dream left behind by the thick-eyebrowed man? No matter what, having this kind of dream made her feel uneasy at all. Her heart was still thumping wildly, but in this quiet environment, listening to his long breathing, her heart slowly calmed down. Looking at his sleeping face, her eyes turned slightly red. In the end, she reached out her hands to gently hug him and buried her head in his chest. "Big Ice Cube, no matter how you chase me away, I will shamelessly follow you. As long as I live, I will be with you. Even if I die, I am not willing to be separated from you." In a temple in the distant mountains. Under a lush locust tree, two figures were sitting across from each other. In front of them was a game of chess. "Why did we lose again?" A white-haired old man complained. The senior monk wearing a plain monk robe smiled. "Your heart is not calm. Of course, your chess pieces are not as good as before." The white-haired old man exploded. "Who said my heart is not calm? My heart is so calm." The senior monk was still smiling. "Then why are you playing chess with this poor monk so late at night?" The white-haired old man could not help but touch his nose and smile unnaturally. "Isn't the night very good? Wouldn't it be a waste if we don't play a game?" The senior monk looked at him calmly. The white-haired old man was quickly defeated. He threw the white chess piece in his hand on the chessboard and stroked his beard. Aren't I worried about that eldest grandson? I've entered the game again. The senior monk took back his chess pieces one by one and smiled benevolently. The King of England is a good man. Moreover, he has a fated person by his side, so everything can be turned into a blessing. The white-haired old man's eyes brightened. Then this granddaughter-in-law is indeed the right one. The senior monk's eyes were unfathomable. Yes or no, everything has its own destiny. The white-haired old man muttered to himself for a moment and then stood up. Where are you going? The senior monk asked. Of course, to sleep. The white-haired old man swaggered back with his hands behind his back. The senior monk looked at his back and smiled while shaking his head. Then he continued to take back his chess pieces. Chapter 886. When she woke up in the morning, there was no trace of Xiao Su beside her. Her drowsiness was immediately awakened, thinking that they had left while she was sleeping. Looking around, she saw the fierce cavalry and big ice block in the middle of the crowd. Only then did she calm down. She went to the stream to wash her face and felt that her body was sticky. She should have sweated from last night's nightmare. Seeing the clear stream in front of her, she really wanted to jump in and wash herself, but it was different now, so she could only endure it. When she came back, everyone was still resting. She couldn't help being surprised. She called out to Hualing, who was walking by, "You're not planning on leaving today?" Hualing said with a serious expression, "The brothers were seriously injured this time. Master said to rest for another day and leave tomorrow morning." Chu Qingyan heard this and swept her eyes over everyone. As expected, they were all injured. She nodded at Hualing, "All right, you can go do your things." After saying this, Hualing did not immediately leave. Chu Qingyan couldn't help looking at him. "If you have something to say, just say it." Hualing rubbed his head with a smile when he heard this. Little Princess Consort really is smart, immediately guessing that this subordinate has something to say. "Stop hemming and hawing. If you have something to say, just say it." Chu Qingyan smiled. Hualing finally spoke. "Little Princess Consort, although it isn't very kind to say this subordinate still hopes that you won't return to Jiangnan." Chu Qingyan was shocked. She thought that they all thought she was a burden and stood on the same side as their master. Why? Although master doesn't say it, anyone can see that this battle is very troublesome and not easy to fight. Whether we can win or not is another matter. Master has always cared about you. Every time we go out to battle, we have the mentality that we won't be able to come back. Perhaps it is very depressing to say this, but this subordinate still wants to say it. At this time of danger, I hope you can accompany master." When he said this, Hualing's eyes passed her and looked at the person not far away. His eyes were filled with respect and concern. Chu Qingyan was shocked by his words. She did not know why, but she felt a deep sense of sorrow. War was cruel. It would cause families to break up, and families to become homeless. Life and death were unpredictable. She pursed her lips and nodded solemnly. "I'll do my best to stay by his side. With your words, this subordinate can be at ease. At the front line, this subordinate will swear to protect your safety with my life." Hualing's eyes were bright as he straightened his back and spoke word by word. Even after Hualing left, Chu Qingyan still hadn't recovered from the aura he had just released. Perhaps this was the courage of the fierce cavalry. Once he had made up his mind, he vowed to follow him to the death. How fortunate was she to know such a group of loyal souls. While she was distracted, 2 eggs suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. She blinked and saw Yan Luo's smiling face. "Little girl, happy birthday." As she spoke, Yan Luo gave her a bright smile, then stuffed the eggs in her hands. "I had Jean Xan look for this. I don't know if it's a bird's egg or something else. It's in the wilderness, so just make do with it. As for the noodles, I'll make up for it next time." Chu Qingyan felt a warm sensation in her hands. She lowered her head to look at the small egg, and a sense of happiness welled up in her heart. She had been so focused on Big Ice Cube that she had forgotten that today was her birthday. She said gratefully to Qing Yanluo, "Thank you. This is already very good. If you have anything to say it to your big ice cube." Qing Yanluo placed her hands on her shoulders, then helped her turn around and pointed at the person under the tree. "Today, you should go and ask him for a present." Chu Qingyan couldn't help blushing. "That's not very good. What's there to be embarrassed about? Go." Qing Yanluo pushed her forward, not forgetting to cheer her on. Chu Qingyan had no choice but to slowly walk over. At this moment, the people around Xiaosu saw Chu Qingyan and tactfully retreated. Before they left, they gave her a look of encouragement. She was sweating profusely. Xiaosu saw the person walking towards him. Her long hair hung high behind her head, and her beautiful face was clearly visible. However, there was a hint of hesitation in her usually bright smile. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "Here, this is for you." She still couldn't bring herself to ask for a present. She wasn't a 3-year-old child, so she didn't hesitate and handed the egg in her hand to him. Xiaosu looked at the egg, but didn't reach out his hand. "Eat too, and you'll be safe." Chu Qingyan was stunned for a moment, then silently withdrew her hand. It turned out that other than her, everyone else remembered her birthday. "Today, I'll get Turin to send you back," Xiaosu said with a slight smile when he saw her embarrassed expression, but his voice was tense. She subconsciously exerted force, and the eggshell broke in her hand. She looked at the person in front of her in disbelief. "You still want me to go back to Jiangnan?" The person in front of him had eyes that were too bright and clear. He couldn't help but avert his gaze and look elsewhere. His tone was indifferent as he said, "Yes." Chu Qingyan's expression immediately turned to anger. "You're actually chasing me away on my birthday?" "Ian." Xiaosu looked at her with a frown. She didn't care about his stern expression. Since he was chasing her away, what was there to be concerned about? "I don't care. I'm not going back." "What can you do about it?" "You're only my fiancé in name, but we're not married yet, so you can't restrict my freedom in life." "Fine, you'll go your way, and I'll go mine," she said without thinking. If he wanted her to go back wholeheartedly, then she would simply express her attitude. She knew that she had gone overboard with her words, but compared to going back to Jiangnan and anxiously waiting for his news and worrying about his safety, it was better to get the pain over with. "Ian, you." Xiaosu's anger was mixed with a bit of surprise, helplessness, and solemnity. The unfinished words were persuasion that he didn't know how to continue. Xiaosu suddenly felt that it was a wrong decision not to marry her immediately. Otherwise, he wouldn't be speechless today and be in no position to decide anything for her. Of course, he could force her to go back, but he didn't want to do so, and he couldn't. The two of them were silent, and a sad atmosphere surged between the two of them. Perhaps his reaction made her feel uncertain and guilty. Chu Qingyan hesitated for a moment before reaching out to pull on his sleeve like a child who had done something wrong. "I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing. This isn't what I was thinking." She pursed her lips and said in despair, "If you're angry with me, you can choose to ignore me." The person in front of him admitting defeat made Xiaosu's cold heart warm up. He sighed softly. "Ian, I'm not angry." Hearing his response, Chu Qingyan's face lit up. She walked closer and threw herself into his arms, then looked up pitifully. "Then can I not give you a birthday present? You just have to promise me one thing and let me be with you." Chapter 887. Looking at her pitiful kitten, he couldn't bear to be cruel. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were no longer as solemn as before. He deliberately sighed. "How did you know that I prepared a gift for you?" Chu Qingyan was stunned. "You didn't prepare a gift for me." You, Xiaosu was amused by her reaction. He couldn't help but reach out to pinch her face. The smooth touch made his heart flutter. "Didn't you just say that you didn't want it?" "Whether I wanted it or not is one thing, whether you prepared it or not is another. This is different." "I don't care. Even if you didn't prepare a gift for me, you have to agree to my wish. I want to stay by your side. You can't chase me away. If you can't even fulfill this wish of mine, then what's the point of my coming-of-age ceremony? Chu Qingyan was immersed in the grief and indignation that Big Ice Cube didn't care about her birthday at all. Xiao Su held back his laughter. She even knew how to threaten him. It seemed that her 5 years of growth and wisdom were not in vain. After she finished speaking, he said faintly, "Then are you still going to follow me to the front line?" She looked up in shock. "You're agreeing?" Xiao Su pretended to smile helplessly. "If I don't agree, I'll become a sinner for all eternity. Moreover, even if I get someone to send you back, are you going to sneak away again? Since that's the case, I might as well keep an eye on you. You make it sound like I'm a disobedient child. Let me tell you, I'm coming of age and an adult. You're not allowed to look at me like that." Although her words were fierce, she couldn't hide the joy in her eyes. Xiao Su saw that she was still pretending to be obedient, and a smile appeared in his eyes. She wasn't his subordinate, so he could punish her or order her around. If she really wanted to follow him, he couldn't do anything about it. Forget it, he would just put her in a safe place where he could see her. Their movements were clearly seen by the people nearby. Chu Qingyan was shy, so she pulled him to the side. Today was her birthday. No matter how many things he had to do, he didn't want to be disturbed, so he went along with her. The two of them walked along the stream. The chaotic flowers gradually confuse people's eyes, and only then can the shallow grass not have horse hooves. Along the mountain stream, butterflies danced in the air, and the sunlight was just right. The two of them put aside all the complicated matters of the outside world and walked hand in hand like an ordinary man and woman in the peaceful mountain forest. Chu Qingyan tilted her head and looked at the person beside her. "When we come back, how about we also find a place like this to retire for the rest of our lives?" He had lived in palaces, in the wilderness, in caves, on battlefields, and in dilapidated houses. He had no requirements for where he lived, as long as she was by his side. The longing and yearning in her eyes moved him, and he had some expectations in his heart. "Okay." At this point, he stopped in his tracks and turned to face her. He took out a small box and handed it to her. "What is this?" Chu Qingyan had a vague guess in her heart. "A gift for your coming of age." Xiao Su helped her open it. "Didn't you say that you didn't prepare?" Before she could finish speaking, the box in front of her opened, revealing the thing inside. It became dazzling when it came in contact with the light, emitting a golden glow. She couldn't help but half squint. When she adjusted to the golden light, she opened her eyes. When she saw the thing clearly, Chu Qingyan let out a gasp of admiration. "This is," a phoenix hairpin lay in the brocade box. It was golden and very beautiful. She reached out and picked it up. When it left the box, it was like a phoenix spreading its wings. Its long tail swayed with its movements, and the feathers were decorated with blood-red beads. Its eyes were two small gemstones, and its body was multicolored. It had a beautiful crown, and its long neck was raised high. From afar, it was as red as fire. This was the first time she saw such a dignified and beautiful hairpin with phoenix patterns. "Is this for me?" She was very surprised. Xiao Su didn't answer, but used his actions to prove it. He took the phoenix hairpin from her hand and lifted his hand to loosen the hair tie on her head. Because he often helped her dress up these past few years, he skillfully helped her tie up her hair and then inserted the phoenix hairpin. Then he carefully gathered her hair and used his hand as a comb, smoothing it down her hair. The person in front of her quickly changed his appearance. He was no longer the handsome young man. He took a step back and looked at his masterpiece with rapt attention. Although there weren't many things that he could use, when half of her hair was tied up and the bun was loose, there was a kind of lazy charm. Her hair was beautiful like the clouds. The phoenix hairpin was fixed in the bun, and the golden tassels fell in front of her forehead. It was more charming than expected, luxurious and gentle. The two phoenix's pearls were dotted, and the autumn waters were long. Her black eyebrows were curved and delicate, and the reflection of the water. Willow's slim waist, graceful and hard to find. He always knew that this little fellow's color was beautiful. Just by dressing up a little, it was enough to make people unable to take their eyes off her. This phoenix hairpin was originally intended for you to wear on your wedding day. Now that you're gone, I don't know when I'll be able to put it on for you again. Xiao Su's tone carried a trace of regret. Chu Qingyan opened her eyes. Just now, she only felt the big ice cube's hand fiddling with her hair. Now that there was no mirror, she didn't know what was going on. She only saw a shadow in his eyes. Her charming face was more delicate than a flower. It doesn't matter. We can wait. When that day comes, I'll put it on for you again. Chu Qingyan touched her bun and replied with a smile. Although she felt that it was a pity, what could be better than the two of them being together? Money was easy to find, but a lover was hard to find. This smile dazzled his eyes. Xiao Su gave a rare smile and nodded in agreement. She usually liked to wear red clothes. Now, she was wearing a red dress with golden threads around the edges. Her wrists and the hem of the dress were covered with complicated patterns, adding a touch of nobility. Her hair was half tied up with a golden hairpin. Standing in the wind, the fog behind her was reflected in his eyes. The wedding dress was like a fire burning the horizon, and from then on, it was branded in his heart like cinnabar. This scene made Xiao Su absent-minded for a moment. If it wasn't for this urgent call, perhaps it wouldn't be long before this little fellow put on the wedding dress for him and became his little bride. Chu Qingyan couldn't see her own face. She only felt that the big ice cube in front of her looked a little strange. Thinking that he was regretting the cancellation of the marriage at the last minute, she opened her mouth to appease him. Big ice cube, I don't know if you've heard of a saying. Xiao Su's thoughts and eyes were all on her. Hearing this, he just casually replied, what saying? I'm most afraid of living a mediocre life and comforting myself that ordinary life is precious. This was her favorite saying, and it was very suitable to mention it at this time. Thus, she tilted her head and continued, some people have ups and downs. When they think about these things when they're old, they'll feel that their lives are full and exciting. Only after experiencing great winds and waves and being confused, can they have the right to talk about ordinary life. If life is like a cup of water at the beginning, then when they're old, they'll feel that they've lived their whole life in vain. Speaking of this, her eyes were full of sincere smiles. Chapter 888. Xiao Su's attention turned from her to her words. He carefully thought over her words and quickly realized that she was comforting him in a roundabout way. His heart warmed and his hand couldn't help touching her face. Her skin was as smooth as jade, just like the feeling she always gave him. It was very comfortable. His hand was warm, and his fingertips were a little rough. It was the result of holding weapons for many years, but it was this kind of touch that made her feel at ease. She tilted her head and rubbed against his palm like a kitten with a strong sense of dependence. Xiao Su looked at her lovingly and finally couldn't help but raise his hand to help her adjust her hairpin. Does it look good? She couldn't help asking with a bit of shyness in her voice. Although she wasn't someone who cared about her appearance, in front of the person she liked, she always wanted to be able to face him in her best state. She tried hard not to show her anticipation, but it still fell into his eyes. He smiled, do you want to hear the truth or a lie? Was this question not easy to answer? Chu Qingyan puffed up her cheeks, a lie. If the truth was hurtful, then she would listen to the lie first. It looks very good. A trace of a smile appeared on his lips. Although the lie sounded very comfortable, it was still a lie. She took a deep breath, then what about the truth? The lie is the truth. Chu Qingyan suddenly raised her head and looked at him in disbelief. Under the faint golden and red light of the sun, she could see the teasing smile on his lips. The sigh in her eyes seemed to evaporate as it gradually turned into surprise and shyness. Xiao Su was amused by her expression. Why was she so cute? In his eyes, no one could compare to her at all. In the end, she leaned into his embrace and hugged him with both hands. Until the ink lingered around her body, she felt at ease. Big Ice Cube, I remember you once said that on my birthday, you would tell me a secret. She recalled this matter. Xiao Su didn't deny it. Do you want to hear it now? No, she raised her head, pressed her finger against his lips, and shook her head. I don't want to know now. Tell me when we come back from the battlefield and get married. Why? Xiao Su could not understand. That wasn't really a secret. It was just that the little guy had never known about it. It was about their first meeting in that remote Mao village. Chu Qingyan bit her lip and was a little distressed. Actually, I really want to know, but I feel that we should keep something in mind. This way, we can work hard to solve everything in front of us as soon as possible. At this point, she tilted her head, her long black hair falling over her shoulders. She was beautiful and her eyes lit up. I look forward to you telling me the truth when the time comes. You make it sound like I'm hiding something heinous from you. Xiao Su casually fiddled with her hair. His eyes were clear and bright with a hint of warmth. The corners of her mouth curled up as she pretended to be mysterious. Actually, I also have something that I've kept in my heart. I haven't told anyone about it. When the time comes, we'll exchange secrets. It was about her origin. It sounded unimaginable, and people might even think that it was some supernatural power. However, she believed that the big ice block would not think so. Okay. As long as she could be at ease, it was up to her. Qing Yanluo and the others saw two figures cuddling and looking at the setting sun from afar. The afterglow shrouded them, one black and one red. One was the most dazzling sun in the sky, while the other was the warm sunset glow. When they met, they became the most magnificent scenery in the world. Qing Yanluo seemed to be murmuring in a low voice, but she also seemed to be talking to Jean Xian beside her. Sometimes, when I see the two of them, I believe that there is still true love in this world. They will help each other in times of need and never leave each other. Things are unpredictable. I don't know if the two of them will be together forever. Jean Xian, who was feeding the horses, paused when he heard that. He looked at the backs of the two of them. He thought that the two of them would definitely be together until the end. When Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su came back, she had already taken off the phoenix hairpin and tied up her hair again. She was no longer as charming as before. Some people dressed as a woman were bright and moving, while others dressed as a man were gentle like jade. However, few people could pull off both at the same time. She could always do it with ease. It could be said that she was a delicate girl with 1,000 faces. When Chu Qingyan came back, she carefully put the brocade box into her bag. Qing Yanluo saw that and couldn't help but tease her. She was about to retort when her fingers touched something hard. She took it out. It was Higashio Motetsu's gift to her on the day they left. She remembered that he told her to open it on her birthday. She couldn't wait to open it. She didn't know what he would give her and was secretly looking forward to it. When the box was opened, Qing Yanluo came over. It was a fan. To be exact, it was a glazed fan. What a unique fan. Qing Yanluo couldn't help but exclaim. It was as if she was blinded by what was inside. Chu Qingyan was also stunned. She took the glazed fan in her hand. It was heavy. It wasn't made of ordinary bamboo, but of purple crystal. She moved her fingers and the fan unfolded. In an instant, a stream of light flashed in front of her eyes. When she took a closer look, she could faintly see that there were small round dots that looked like gemstones. It was already close to night. The glazed fan was emitting a purple light in the dark. It was dizzying. It's obvious that the person who gave this gift has put in a lot of effort. Even Qing Yanluo couldn't help but praise. Chu Qingyan looked at the distant sky and smiled. Dongting, thank you. Little girl, happy birthday. In a lush forest, Higashio Motetsu sat on a tall tree at the top of a mountain. He held a pot of wine in his hand and looked at the rising moon with a smile. He imagined what kind of surprised expression the little girl would have when she opened the gift he gave her. This was the first time he had so carefully prepared a gift for a girl. A gust of cold wind blew, dispersing the heat on his body and calming his thoughts. Ever since I met you, I haven't attended any of your birthdays. Perhaps I won't have the chance in the future. Because when we meet again, our positions will be, he didn't know why, but he felt a slight pain in his chest. His face turned cold. He raised his head and drank the wine in his hand. Then, he loosened his grip. There was a crisp sound under the tree. He jumped down from the treetop and walked down the mountain with steady steps. Just as his mother said, no one would accompany another for a lifetime. Most of them would part ways after walking for a while. So it was time to part ways. But not until a long time later. He realized that it was just an excuse to deceive himself and others. For so many years, he had been surrounded by others. He didn't care about anyone. He didn't have any relatives or friends. He was very stingy. He didn't do business at a loss. But for one person, he suffered a double loss. Still, he was happy and didn't feel bad. Later, he had an epiphany. In fact, he had given all his gentleness and kindness to the little girl who often sat on the treetop with him and talked nonsense. Chapter 889. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, it was a new day. The fierce cavalry were all experts among experts, and their recovery abilities were stronger than ordinary people. After a day and 2 nights of rest, they had recovered most of their energy. Thus, they were ready to set off early in the morning. Then, they saw their young princess consort following beside them, looking refreshed. They knew that their master had relented, and they were even more energized. Although no one said it out loud, they all understood in their hearts that the little princess was their master's life and all his thoughts. Therefore, they hoped that no matter where they went, they would be able to walk together. In the past, they didn't understand what love was. Now, not only did they see it clearly, but they also believed that with the little princess's intelligence and wisdom, following their master would be like adding wings to a tiger. Chu Qingyan didn't know what they were thinking. She was happy that everyone's injuries were almost healed. Then, she counted the number of people in the fierce cavalry and ordered Jean Xian, Turin, and Huling to coordinate and communicate. After all, the most important thing at this time was to be united. Ethereal saw Qing Yanluo's demonstration and his brows twitched. He wanted to persuade her, but he knew that she wouldn't listen. In the end, he sighed helplessly. Forget it, the boat will cross when it comes to it. The group continued on their journey. This time, their speed was even faster than before. Ever since the last attack, they didn't encounter any resistance. The enemy must have thought that they would be able to kill them in one blow, but they didn't expect to fail in one blow. They also didn't have any reinforcements. Thus, they traveled for 6 consecutive days, rain or shine, and successfully arrived at the place where the 3 armies were stationed. When they arrived, it was already late at night. Who is trespassing into the camp? Xiao Su and his men had just approached the camp when dozens of soldiers appeared at the wooden gate in front of them. They were holding spears and their blades were pointed at them. Chu Qingyan followed beside Xiao Su. She glanced at these people. Not to mention their expressions, their clothes were either stained with blood or torn in several places. They didn't look like imperial soldiers at all. In addition, they looked exhausted. Even if they had drawn their weapons, it wouldn't be enough for her to deal with them alone. Just by looking at these guards, she could guess what kind of situation the people inside were in. She couldn't help but frown. No matter how disastrous these losses were, it shouldn't be to this extent. She couldn't help but turn her head to look at Big Ice beside her. She saw that he had also noticed this, and his eyes were as dark as ink. Huling took out a token from his chest and held it in his hand to show it to the guard. With the light from the fire on the platform, Chu Qingyan could faintly see the word on it, Ing. His Royal Highness. The guard standing at the front rubbed his eyes and saw the contents of the token clearly. He exclaimed in surprise. Following his shouts, the people behind him turned to look at Xiao Su in unison. At this time, everyone noticed that the leader was wearing a mask. When they heard that His Royal Highness was 10 years old, the palace caught fire and burned his face, so he wore a mask all year round. When they thought of this, everyone fell to their knees. Your subordinate pays his respects to His Royal Highness. The respectful salutes were accompanied by tears of joy. It was as if they had been drifting on the sea for many days, and in their most helpless, painful, and fearful moment, they had welcomed their savior. One of the soldiers had already gone in to report. Just as everyone was kneeling, a group of soldiers in armor walked out of the main gate of the military camp. Most of them looked excited and incredulous. His Royal Highness. General. Everyone immediately surrounded them and escorted Xiao Su inside. Chu Qingyan looked at Big Ice, who was loved and respected by everyone, and suddenly understood what it meant to be supported by the people. She smiled and felt honored. Cheng Yanluo poked her arm and teased, "Don't you feel especially proud?" Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows smugly. "I feel like I've hugged the most powerful thigh in the world." After entering the tent, the soldiers in armor knelt on the ground and kowtowed sincerely and excitedly. "Your Highness, you're finally here. We've been waiting for you for a long time. We're useless. We haven't been able to guard your territory for the past 6 months." An old general wiped his slightly red eyes. "Your Highness, we've always believed that you'll come back." A young soldier's eyes shone brightly. Most of these people were his brothers who had followed him through life and death. Among them, there were many who had achieved countless military merits and could have used them to achieve a meteoric rise. However, Imperial Father was afraid that if these people were promoted and transferred, they would strengthen his power. Thus, intentionally, or unintentionally, he neglected their existence. As a result, all these years, they were still guarding the furthest reaches of Sichuan Emperor's territory. Xiao Su raised his hand and gestured for everyone to rise. He walked over to the old general and personally helped him up. The old general was overwhelmed by the favor. He slowly opened his mouth. His tone was calm but amiable. "You don't have to worry. This prince has already taken the position of commander-in-chief. From now on, this prince will fight side by side with you. We'll take back the lost territory and regain the lost face. We'll revive Sichuan's prestige and not let the enemy look down on us." These words weren't very impassioned, but in everyone's ears, it made their blood boil. It was as if their dead passion had been reignited. "Yes." They answered in unison. They were no longer as lifeless as they were at the beginning. "Good. Count the number of soldiers you have and the number of casualties. Also, sort out the tactics for fighting the enemy at this stage. After 2 hours, we'll have a meeting in the main tent. You can't be absent. If you can't answer this prince's questions at that time, you'll be punished according to military law." Xiao Su wasn't a sentimental person. In front of outsiders, he was so rational that he was almost ruthless. No one felt that it was inappropriate. In the past, they had gone through fire and water with His Highness. They were used to his swift and decisive way of doing things. And this kind of His Highness made them feel more at ease. It was as if they had a backbone. They also knew that this wasn't the time to talk, so they didn't stay for long and immediately left. The soldiers rushed out in 2s and 3s. They swept away their previous decadence and walked with the wind. Soon, the tent was empty. The noisy atmosphere suddenly became cold and cheerless. Chu Qingyan, who was standing to the side, stared unblinkingly at the person sitting behind the table. It was as if she was seeing him for the first time. It turned out that when it came to official business, the big ice block was so strict and domineering. She hadn't finished sighing with emotion when she heard the sound of chaotic footsteps and persuasion outside the tent. "Your Highness, you still have injuries on your body. Walk slower. If your injuries open up again, then," she heard an anxious voice. The words vaguely traveled in. "Don't stop me. My imperial brother is here. Naturally, I have to go see him." Moreover, this little injury is nothing. Don't make a fuss over nothing. The weak voice was impatient. It was a bit familiar, but it also felt strange. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but open her eyes in surprise. The person who came was. Chapter 890. The person talking outside had already approached the tent. The moment he finished speaking, Chu Qingyan heard the sound of the tent's curtains being pulled open. It had been 4 years since they last saw each other. She was a little agitated. She wondered how the young man who used to follow her had grown up. Who's making a ruckus outside? Xiao Su's cold voice rang out. A white figure walked in first, but he didn't walk very fast. With a single glance, she could see the bright red bloodstains on the unlined clothing. His pale face was devoid of color, and he looked as if he had just escaped from the brink of death. Even though he was in such dire straits, the light from outside spread out behind him. His blurry silhouette gradually became clearer, like a piece of high-quality unpolished jade, blooming with dazzling light. At this moment, the person seemed to have pulled on his wounds due to his rapid movements. He gritted his teeth and endured, but the blood on his clothing became even redder. Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but take a step forward, wanting to see him clearly. However, this person seemed to only have eyes for the person sitting behind the table. He staggered 2 steps, then after steadying himself, he took a deep breath and slowly walked over. Chu Qingyan thought to herself that this was not a good time to reunite with him, so she retreated to her original spot. At the same time, she saw the soldiers behind him, and she gave up on the idea of going forward to support his tottering body. Xiao Ran's gaze was locked on the person in front of him. He was still the same energetic and calm person he had been when he left 4 years ago. After so many years, he hadn't changed at all. This was the person he had admired since he was a child. Xiao Ran bit his lower lip subconsciously and endured the pain in his body. He tried to make every step as steady as possible. He couldn't lose face in front of his imperial brother. He had always wanted to let his imperial brother know that he had worked hard all these years. However, he didn't expect to be in such a sorry state when they met again. He shook off the support from the people behind him and walked step by step to the center of the tent. Xiao Su, on the other hand, sat still and watched him walk over with a cold gaze. Neither of them spoke, and the people on the side seemed to feel that the atmosphere was not right. They all looked down and didn't move. After he steadied himself, he moved his lower lip and his eyes suddenly reddened. His expression was pained. Eldest brother, this subject brother has let down Xishuan, let down imperial father and the common people. He tried his best to suppress his emotions, but the moment he opened his mouth, he broke through. His hoarse voice was filled with pain, self-blame, and regret. It's just a few defeats. Now, raise your head. You're the Prince of Xishuan, the current commander-in-chief of the 3 armies. As long as the commander-in-chief doesn't fall, the morale of the army won't fall. Look at what you've become. After he was done venting, Xiao Su spoke calmly, but every word he said hit the nail on the head, directly hitting his heart. Only then did Xiao Ran slowly raise his head. The redness in his eyes made him look like a desperate little beast. Just now, he didn't dare to look directly at his eldest imperial brother. Now that he heard his words, his heart was filled with regret and relief. This was the person he had always respected. With just a few words, he had saved him from a dead end. Eldest brother, I already know about the imperial edict. Right now, you are the commander-in-chief of the 3 armies, so I am willing to step down. Xiao Ran did not have any lingering thoughts about this position. This was something that imperial father had fought for him. Originally, he had been full of ambition and wanted to do something big. Who would have thought that being an armchair strategist was a very sad thing? Now, it could finally be returned to its rightful owner. Xiao Ran came forward and took out a token from his sleeve before placing it on the table. Hualing and Turan on the side saw the token that His Majesty had taken from their master 4 years ago. Now, it was being sent back in this kind of situation. The 2 of them were filled with emotion. What happened to your wounds? Xiao Su's gaze did not look at the token. Instead, it stopped at his chest and he asked with a frown. Xiao Ran followed his gaze and lowered his head. A trace of bitterness rose in the corner of his mouth. I lost the last battle and left the city. However, I was ambushed and narrowly escaped death. I only returned to the camp today. He said it easily, but that narrow escape really made him wander around the gates of hell before returning. Xiao Su nodded. He knew about the matter of his fourth brother going missing. Now that he was standing in front of him, he was relieved. Your battle experience is almost 0. This time, you were the leader of the army in the battle. It was a bit hard on you. No matter what happens in this half a year, you don't have to blame yourself too much. Seeing the blood on his chest, Xiao Su thought for a bit and comforted him with a few words. Although the struggle for power in the court had entered a white-hot stage, this brother of his, he had never wronged him since he was young. Even now, he still did. Brother, you don't have to comfort me. I know my limits. Xiao Ran's mood was very low. You are heavily injured. Go and rest first. Everything else can wait until your body recovers. Xiao Su knew that he would not be able to walk out of this shadow for a while. He needed some time to adjust, so he didn't say more to him. Xiao Ran knew that his eldest brother had been busy since arriving at the military camp. It was best that he did not disturb him. However, there was something hidden in his heart. If he didn't ask now, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to eat or sleep. Eldest brother, I have something to ask. Xiao Ran gathered his courage and said. Xiao Su picked up the document. He didn't even raise his eyebrows. Ask. Standing to the side, Chu Qingyan saw Xiao Ran's lonely and self-blaming appearance from the moment he came in. He was not as high-spirited and unforgiving as he was in Jingdo. She couldn't help but feel a trace of pity. She thought that he must have suffered a lot during this period. Otherwise, a person who loved to laugh so much in the past would often look so dejected now. Now that she heard him ask, her curiosity was piqued. He stammered as if he wanted to ask something. But at that moment, Cheng Yenluo suddenly entered the accounting room. She walked over to Chu Qingyan and whispered a few words in her ear. Chu Qingyan glanced at the uneasy Xiao Ran, then followed Cheng Yenluo out. Because Chu Qingyan was standing in the dark and Xiao Ran was sitting in the main seat, he didn't notice her at all. So when she left, he didn't notice. Xiao Ran crossed his fingers in front of him. After pursing his lips, he finally asked in a low voice, Eldest brother, how has Qingyan been these past few years? As soon as he said this, Xiao Su's hand froze, but he still didn't look up. His tone was the same as before. She can run, jump, play, and fool around. Xiao Ran couldn't help but smile when he heard this short sentence. Scenes of the past floated before his eyes. Hearing the little girl's cheerful words and bright eyes, a lot of the worries in his heart immediately dissipated. Then what does she like to eat, wear, and use now? He blurted out. Then he felt that it was a little inappropriate. He scratched his head and said unnaturally, I've written her a few letters in the past few years, but I haven't sent them out. I only send them to her before she goes to war. Xiao Su's expression was calm. She likes everything that's delicious, beautiful, and useful. Xiao Ran felt that this range was very broad. He scratched his head again and finally asked the question that had been on his mind. Has she mentioned me in the past few years? No. Chapter 891. No. 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 Xiao Ran instantly froze. Qingyan had not missed him all these years. In the end, he did not know how he left the tent. His soulless appearance attracted the attention of the soldiers on both sides. Was the fourth prince too sad because he handed over his military power? Or was he scolded by his royal highness? But it didn't look like it either. Chu Qingyan finished her work and walked towards Xiao Ran. She couldn't help but want to wave at him, but the other side acted like he didn't see her and floated past her. She awkwardly put her hand down in the air and turned around to look at Xiao Ran's floating figure. She was a bit confused. Was he possessed? Or was he scolded by the big ice block? Forget it, there was still a long way to go and they would meet sooner or later. Right now, it was better for her to avoid suspicion. After all, women were not allowed in the military camp. At this time, she could not cause any trouble for the big ice block. When there was a suitable opportunity, she would come back to meet Xiao Ran. Thinking of this, she returned to the tent. Where did you go? As soon as she went in, she heard the big ice block's voice. Looking up, she saw that his eyes were on the table and not looking at her. She muttered in her heart. She was a living person in front of Xiao Ran, but he did not recognize her. Now that she had only lifted the curtain, the big ice block recognized her from her voice. Could it be that she and the big ice block had a telepathic connection? Thinking of this, her heart became a bit happier. Just now, Steward Lee from the military camp came to find me. He said that he wanted to prepare everyone's food and clothing and asked me to help. She walked closer to him. At this time, he was the only one in the tent, so she did not have any scruples. She leaned in front of him and whispered to him. He was relieved to leave these matters to her. Speaking of which, this person is quite efficient. Just now, he had already set up several tents, bedding, and other daily necessities. Now, I've already asked Jean Xian to bring some people to tidy them up. She stroked her chin and thought back to the person she had just met. Her words were full of praise. Xiao Su thought for a moment before replying, Manager Li used to work under me. He's reliable. If you need anything, you can look for him. Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised. You even know him? She thought that since the big ice cube had reached such a high position, he wouldn't be able to communicate with the people below. Why did it feel like he was very familiar with them? You're wrong. As a leader, you have to know everyone's situation. That's the best way to know people. If someone uses this to deceive you, you can only be kept in the dark. Only when you understand everything can you take control. If you want to make any decision accurately, you need the right time, the right place, and the right people. No one is born knowing how to lead an army into battle. Even if one is talented, without hard work, one can only fade into the crowd. Xiao Su didn't simply dismiss her question. Instead, he seriously considered it before answering her. Perhaps Chu Qingyan didn't understand his words right now, but in the future, she would know that the words he usually said had been integrated into her life, benefiting her for the rest of her life. Chu Qingyan carefully pondered over his words. When she looked at him again, her eyes were filled with worship and respect. Many people only saw his strategizing side, but didn't know how much sweat and hard work he had put in behind it. As the saying goes, 1 minute on the stage is 10 years of hard work off the stage. Big Ice Cube, my heart aches for you. Chu Qingyan propped up her chin with both hands, her eyes filled with love. He was stunned. He was just telling her how to manage people, but he didn't expect her brain to be so strange, jumping to other places in an instant. Then he gave a low cough, his ears slightly red as he said, I'm not as weak as you think. Perhaps it was because the words had taken away the heat, he recovered his indifference. As a man, as a prince, I have to bear more than others. I've already prepared myself a long time ago, so I've never felt tired. You don't need to think too much. You must be tired from the journey, so you should go rest first. Chu Qingyan was first moved by his words, but when she heard the last sentence, she immediately stood up and shook her head, saying, I'm not accompanying you to be a vase. I also want to sit in on the discussion later. Xiao Su muttered to himself. In the end, under her sparkling eyes, he agreed, remember not to reveal your identity. Understood. She stood at attention and gave a standard salute. Xiao Su was amused by her mischievous appearance. Oh right, when I came in just now, I saw Xiao Ran. He looked like he was struck by lightning. Did you teach him a lesson too harshly? She casually asked. When Xiao Su heard this, he couldn't help but recall Xiao Ran's shocked expression. He tapped his fingers on the table, his expression indifferent as he looked at the person in front of him. You want to fight for justice for him? Chu Qingyan didn't notice the strangeness in his tone. She chuckled, then gritted her teeth and said, why would I fight for justice for him? I don't even have time to kick him twice. Oh. Xiao Su was a little surprised. When did the little fellow and Xiao Ran have such a deep grudge? Why didn't he know? He heard her snort softly. If he was a little more competent and defeated Nansang earlier, he wouldn't have lost the city to the point where he had to change the general and rush you back from Jiangnan. I wouldn't have had to follow him to the battlefield, and the commoners would have been able to live and work in peace. That's why I think you should give him a good scolding. As the saying goes, if you don't beat him, you won't become anything. I also want to beat him up to vent my anger. More importantly, the current situation, regardless of whether it was Sichuan Emperor's favoritism or Consort Yu's scheme, was all because of Xiao Ran. She wasn't so foolish as to vent her anger on Xiao Ran. Instead, she hoped that if he really wanted to sit on the throne, he would show it to the civil and military officials and make the commoners submit to him. He wouldn't need others to help him clean up his mess. This way, he wouldn't involve the big ice cube again. It was easy to get in, but hard to get out. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but compare him to the big ice cube. She felt that if the big ice cube could do something at his age, he should be able to do it too. Now, she was angry at him for failing to live up to her expectations. Xiao Su relaxed his brows when he felt the little fellow's surging emotions. He felt much better. He said calmly, he's still young and inexperienced. It's already not easy for him to achieve what he has today. The next time you see him, you don't have to be too harsh on him. But when you were younger than him, you already managed the army well. Chu Qingyan was dissatisfied. Xiao Su raised his brows and said in a low voice, Ian, you have to remember that there is only one Xiao Su in this world. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Was the big ice cube affirming himself? However, this was a well-deserved title. In the future, when you see Xiao Ran in the army, remember not to reveal his identity. Ah. He has too many henchmen of the Fu family around him. Oh, okay. She thought that the big ice cube was worried that the Fu family would use this opportunity to create trouble. Unexpectedly, he was trying to prevent his unlucky younger brother from coveting his baby. Chapter 892. 2 hours passed quickly. The two sides of the main tent were filled with generals who commanded a certain amount of troops. This General Gao Hao pays his respects to His Royal Highness. This General Jing Guanghui pays his respects to His Royal Highness. After waiting for everyone to pay their respects, Xiao Su waved his hand. Please sit. At the front of the right was the pale-faced Xiao Ran. Although Xiao Su didn't approve of his lack of care for his body, he didn't ask him to leave. Xiao Su didn't bother with the pleasantries and went straight to the point. Report the current situation of the soldiers in your hands. The 1st Battalion originally had 12,000 soldiers. 5,612 died in battle, and 3,578 were injured. Soon, the reports came in one after another, with a civilian official recording the data. Even if Chu Qingyan hadn't experienced a war before, she could feel how terrible the war was just by looking at the data. How fierce the war with the Southern Blue Army was, and how disastrous the losses were. Her gaze inadvertently fell on Xiao Ran, who was in front of her. Every time he heard a number, his face paled a little. His fingers were clenched on the armchair, and his veins were bulging. His face was calm, but his eyes were dark. It was obvious that he was enduring a lot of pain. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. He wasn't an ice cube, so he couldn't be blamed for not commanding the army well and controlling the situation well. While she was in a daze, everyone finished reporting. Xiao Su immediately gave the order to train the troops the next morning. Although everyone didn't know why Xiao Su would have the leisure to train at such a critical juncture, Xiao Su's accumulated prestige was still indelible in their hearts. Therefore, most of them accepted the order. However, there were always some people who didn't fear death and challenged authority. For example, the person standing behind Xiao ran, Fu Shouyu. Fu Shouyu stood up and said in a strange tone, General Ping Nan, I wonder what the meaning of your order is? The enemy is right in front of you, and you're training here. Aren't you afraid of being unprepared and losing the city again? You were specially sent by the imperial court to deal with the Southern Blue Army. You're not here to play house. At this time, there was actually someone who was not afraid of death and dared to stand up against Xiao Su. This man was a descendant of the right minister's side branch. Against Xiao Su, everybody on the street knew Sima Zhao's intention. Everyone looked at each other, and the atmosphere suddenly froze. Xiao Su glanced at him indifferently, not taking him seriously at all. However, Fu Shouyu, who had his head held high and his chest puffed out, had his spirit erased by this one glance. The light gaze gave people a kind of austere and iron-blooded pressure. Fu Shouyu resisted the urge to retreat and braced himself to hold on. General Fu, right? Fu Shouyu knew that he had never seen him before, but he didn't expect him to know him. It is this general. Chu Qingyan watched from the side. When the big ice cube looked at her and asked a simple question, it had already taken control of the situation. The other party's momentum had already lost by 30%. She was looking forward to how the big ice cube was going to teach this rude person a lesson. 10 days ago, you led 5,000 soldiers to defend the southern city. The other party sent 6,000 soldiers to resist. Although there was a large disparity in numbers, you only used 3 days to defeat the city. Is this true? Xiao Su looked at him calmly. Fu Shouyu didn't know why he was dragged into this, but since the question was asked, he couldn't avoid it. He refuted, that's right. The other party used a tactic of attrition. Our people were exhausted, and in the end, we lost miserably. It can be said that we lost because we had fewer people. Is that so? Xiao Su laughed in a low voice. Hearing this, everyone felt their hair stand on end. Fu Shouyu felt that he was being looked down upon. He sneered, do you think this general dares to deceive the general? Xiao Su ignored his words. Twirling the brush between his fingers, he said unhurriedly, if this prince didn't remember wrongly, the 5,000 soldiers given to you were the elites of the 3 armies. The other party only sent ordinary soldiers. Everyone present was in an uproar. Because of the recent battle, they rarely paid attention to these details. Only when Xiao Su revealed this matter did everyone remember it. They looked at Fu Shouyu in shock. Those who could be called elites were the strongest soldiers in the 3 armies. At least, they could fight 1 against 5. If they were defeated by 6,000 ordinary soldiers, it could only mean that the leader of the army was incompetent and had made the wrong deployment. That was why the fortified city had been lost to the enemy. Sensing the scrutiny and doubt of his colleagues, Fu Shouhu's face turned pale from his previous arrogance. He didn't expect Xiao Su to know his every move so well. It was too scary. Moreover, he had been recommended to the 3 armies because he was a collateral member of the Fu clan. Many people knew that he didn't go through the proper channels. But now, Xiao Su had revealed this in front of everyone. He had no face left. Fu Shouyu relied on nepotism to abuse his power. He was uneducated, had no talent, and had no inner strength. Many people were already dissatisfied with him, but they didn't dare to say anything because they were afraid of the Fu clan's power. Now, does General Fu have any objections? Xiao Su's tone was as calm as ever. How could Fu Shouyu dare to speak again? The other party didn't answer directly. Instead, he casually said something that caught him off guard. He had failed to lead the army. How could he still have the face to speak? Even if he felt indignant, no one would be willing to stand on his side. There were also a few members of the Fu family present. They originally wanted to support Fu Shouyu, but as soon as they saw him speak, they were silenced by Xiao Su's words. They recalled their performance on the battlefield and silently retracted their feet. They lowered their heads, afraid that Xiao Su would target them and use them as an example to make an example out of them. When Xiao Su saw that Fu Shouyu had nothing to say, he looked around at the indignant crowd and said loudly, "Since this king is the commander-in-chief, I will not neglect the safety of the three armies. Tomorrow, this king wants to see all the soldiers. If anyone is absent or late, they will be punished according to military rules. The general in the platoon will receive double the punishment." Yes. Everyone accepted the order. Hand in the battle dossiers you have written. Prepare for tomorrow's drill. Xiao Su didn't waste any time and dismissed them. Everyone was intimidated by Xiao Su's cold and imposing aura. They silently handed in their dossiers and left. His Royal Highness had set the fire 3 times. The first time was on the Fu clan. The second time was on the 3 armies. The third time was probably coming soon. But in the eyes of the faithful, the torches burned well, burned brilliantly, and burned with a sound of gurgling. After everyone left, Xiaoran was the only one left in the tent. He stood up and hesitated for a moment before saying, "Eldest brother, you don't have to give me face. Punish those who should be punished. I will not complain." He was referring to the Fu clan faction. In fact, he also hated those who relied on connections. Xiao Su opened the dossiers and quickly browsed through them as if he didn't care. "Even if you don't say it, I will not let go of anyone who takes advantage of the loopholes." Xiao Ran's expression was bitter. As expected, his eldest brother was still so impartial. Chapter 893. Go back and rest. Your next task is to nurse your body back to health. Otherwise, Father Emperor and your mother Consort will be worried. Xiao Su looked at him standing there in a daze. It was as if he had seen the scene from more than 10 years ago, when he had pulled on his sleeves and curiously asked him about the battlefield again and again. Xiao Su couldn't help but soften his heart. Xiao Ran's heart warmed when he heard this. He thought that his eldest brother had lost hope in him. "Qin Di will take good care of himself and won't let you worry." His young face glowed with vitality. Xiao Su's eyes flashed with a trace of a smile when he saw this. He was about to wave his hand to dismiss him. At this time, Xiao Ran fearlessly opened his mouth. "Eldest brother, after this war, can Qin Di go find Qing Yan? Qin Di misses her very much." The smile in his eyes suddenly disappeared. Xiao Su's mouth twitched and his voice was indifferent. "We'll talk about it again." Xiao Ran felt the temperature in the tent suddenly drop. He thought that he was injured and his bones were weak. He couldn't help but be more determined to nurse his body back to health. Leaving the main tent, Xiao Ran slowly walked back to his own tent with the help of his subordinates. At this time, a youth in red walked in front of him. His appearance was delicate and handsome. It could be seen that he was young, but his temperament was outstanding and he had a rare quick-wittedness. Xiao Ran stopped in his tracks. When the other party saw him, he also slowed down and stopped. The two of them were only 5 steps apart. "Who are you? Why don't you pay your respects to our 4th Highness?" The subordinate who was supporting Xiao Ran reprimanded arrogantly. Seeing that the other party wasn't wearing any armor or military badge, he didn't seem to have any official position and was easy to control. The subordinate became snobbish. When Xiao Ran heard his subordinate's words, he couldn't help but frown. He was about to scold him when he saw that the other party had already bowed slightly. "Greetings to your Royal Highness the 4th Prince. I am Chu Yan, serving under His Royal Highness. I did not mean to offend your Royal Highness. Please forgive me." Chu Qingyan leaned forward and lowered her eyes. At an angle that Xiao Ran and the others couldn't see, her lips curled into a faint mocking smile. "Xiao Ran, I didn't expect that after not seeing each other for so many years, we would actually meet again in such a manner." Xiao Ran wanted to stop him, but it was too late. He glared angrily at the subordinate next to him. That subordinate originally wanted to use his master's power to intimidate others, but once he saw his master's gaze, his legs trembled and he immediately lowered his head. "So you are the guest that my eldest brother took in Lian City. I know that my emperor brother has always valued you. You don't have to be so polite." Xiao Ran stepped forward, wanting to personally help her up, but Chu Qingyan avoided him. Xiao Ran was stunned for a moment, but quickly regained his composure. Chu Qingyan casually took a step back, then raised her head to look at the person in front of her. A faint smile hung on her lips. Your Royal Highness is too kind. This one is merely running errands for His Royal Highness. For some reason, Xiao Ran found her to be very pleasing to the eye. Her words were humble and her attitude was neither servile nor overbearing. It was rare to see someone of her age. Xiao Ran wanted to get close to her. Chu Qingyan, you are too modest. I naturally understand my emperor brother's temperament. If you don't have any ability, you won't be able to stay by his side. When he talked about Xiao Su, Xiao Ran's eyes lit up. Chu Qingyan saw the admiration in his eyes and frowned slightly. When the two parties were fighting so fiercely, the two main characters didn't seem to care at all. If they were to fall out, how would the two of them deal with it? It seemed that the people in the imperial court were a bunch of troublemakers who were more anxious than the eunuchs. Although Chu Qingyan didn't answer, Xiao Ran saw the smile on her face. For some reason, his heart relaxed a lot. And the person in front of him was like a jade tree. He felt a trace of familiarity and couldn't help but think of the unscrupulous and crafty young girl from back then. Chu Yan, how is the environment in Lian City? Is it very difficult to live there? Chu Qingyan saw that he was seriously injured and was a little weak. She wanted to leave, but she didn't think that he would have the intention to chat. She was a little suspicious. Could it be that he saw through her identity? However, when she met his sincere gaze, she dispelled this concern. When I first arrived, it could be said that it was a place where chickens didn't lay eggs and birds didn't shit. The people didn't have enough to eat and the customs were tough. There was no peace to speak of. Chu Qingyan saw that although he was seriously injured, his mental state was still good. So she stayed a little longer to tell him about it. The young man in front of her had a face like the full moon and lips like a red lotus. He was no longer the brat from 4 years ago. His facial features had matured and he was also a handsome young man who would be thrown fruits at by people when he walked out. Chu Qingyan was very gratified. She didn't know if it was because she automatically brought in the identity of his sister-in-law, but she felt more and more like she was looking at a junior. Thus, she picked out a few interesting stories from Lian City and told him about them. So it really is a remote and desolate place. Xiao Ran pulled the corner of his mouth and there was a strange look in his eyes. Before Chu Qingyan could see it clearly, he had already returned to normal and stared at the ground with a hesitant expression. Chu Qingyan felt that it was about time to go back. Just now when the generals handed over the dossiers, she guessed that Big Ice Cube would be reading through it all night. So she left at that time and found the cook to prepare some food for her Big Ice Cube to fill his stomach. But she didn't expect to meet Xiao Ran here. Moreover, he seemed to be very interested in learning about the matters in Lian City. Chu Yan. Chu Qingyan was suddenly called by him and subconsciously looked at him. He looked hesitant and she couldn't help but take the initiative to speak. Your Highness, do you have something to ask? Xiao Ran didn't deny it and nodded. Then he waved his subordinates away and had them stand far away. Those subordinates knew that Chu Qingyan was Xiao Su's subordinate and were very worried about letting the two of them be alone. But under Xiao Ran's cold gaze, they had no choice but to retreat. Chu Qingyan felt that Xiao Ran was mostly cheerful and easygoing at times and arrogant at times. But just now, she saw a shadow of Big Ice Cube on him. He was quiet and dignified. She laughed in her heart. As expected of a brother. At this time, Xiao Ran had already started to speak hesitantly. Chu Yan, you've been in Lian City for so long. You should have seen a girl called Chu Qingyan, right? Has she been living well in Lian City these past few years? Has she suffered a lot? Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. She didn't expect him to ask about this. But at this time, Xiao Ran was already looking at her with sparkling eyes. He looked both expectant and nervous. Under your Highness's protection, she has been living very well. She hasn't suffered much. Every day, she grows flowers and raises small animals. She doesn't have any worries. Chu Qingyan spoke against her conscience. She looked away and didn't look at Xiao Ran. So she didn't see the joy and longing in Xiao Ran's eyes. That's good, that's good. Xiao Ran's eyes were filled with joy. Then he said, Chu Yan, I have something to ask of you. Chapter 894. When Xiao Ran said this, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but look at him. If there's anything this one can help with, this one will definitely do his best. Xiao Ran smiled and nodded. This youth was gentle and polite, very much to his liking. I'll look for you after the drill tomorrow, okay? Chu Qingyan thought for a moment, then finally nodded. Okay. After answering, she felt that there was nothing else to delay, so she planned to say her goodbyes. Unexpectedly, the person opposite her seemed to have something to say. Chu Qingyan, do you know how to paint? Xiao Ran's eyes suddenly lit up and he looked at her expectantly. Chu Qingyan couldn't figure out what he wanted to do, but after traveling for so many years, she instinctively narrowed her eyes. I don't know why your highness is asking this. Xiao Ran didn't notice the inquisitive look in her eyes. He coughed lightly, as if it was a bit unnatural. Chu Qingyan finally noticed the faint blush on his face. It was much better than his previous paleness. Thinking that he was coughing because of his wound, she looked worried. It's like this, I haven't seen Qingyan for many years. We used to play well in the capital, and now I miss her. Unfortunately, she's now in a foreign land. I don't know when I'll see her again, so, when he said this, Xiao Ran's fake calmness couldn't help but become uneasy. He coughed again before he finished speaking. So I want to ask you, can you paint her current appearance? He had always wanted to know how she looked like now, but Mu Fei had never allowed him to interfere with Lianqing's matters. Eldest imperial brother had protected her so well that not a drop of water could leak out. He simply couldn't obtain her painting scroll. He knew that he was being rude. If it was someone else, he definitely wouldn't ask this, but this youth in front of him made him have an inexplicable urge to confide in him. Chu Qingyan's heart was moved. She hadn't thought that in a place like Jingdo, there would still be a friend who cared about her so much. She had thought that after so many years, no matter how deep their friendship was, it would have faded with time. She hadn't paid much attention to the letter in Jiangnan, but now, seeing him so sincerely concerned about her, her throat felt a little dry. Unfortunately, now was not the time to reveal his identity. She blinked a few times to get rid of the tears in her eyes and shook her head regretfully. This one has been practicing martial arts for many years and rarely comes into contact with those refined talents, so I have to disappoint the fourth prince. A look of disappointment flashed across Xiao Ran's face, but he soon felt relieved. Although Chu Yan was with his eldest brother, he was still an outsider. Even if he could draw Qingyan's appearance, he couldn't draw her charm. Only someone who knew her well would be able to draw her every frown and smile. It's nothing. Thank you, Brother Chu, for talking with me so much tonight. See you tomorrow. Xiao Ran smiled gratefully at her. Then he called for his subordinates and slowly left. Chu Qingyan watched his back. The night wind blew and lifted his clothes. She had a feeling that he hadn't been living well these past few years. Just as she was lost in thought, Su Yi came over and said that His Highness had sent people out to find her because she hadn't returned for a long time. Chu Qingyan nodded. The thought that had just formed in her mind dissipated. She took Su Yi back. Entering the tent, her sharp eyes saw the supper on the table. She thought that the cook in the military camp was quite efficient. She also guessed why Big Ice Cube was worried about her. The food was here, but she was nowhere to be seen. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but stick out her tongue. Where did you go? Xiao Su held a file in his hand and leaned back in his chair to read it. Hearing the sound of footsteps, he raised his head and looked at her calmly. The tent wasn't big. The candlelight lit up the room, along with the person sitting there. He was very tall, neither thin nor fat. In modern terms, he had a standard figure. He wore a black robe with a vertical collar. In the middle, there was a sparkling white gem that gave people a kind of abstinence aura. From head to toe, other than the gem, there was a jade pendant on his belt. There were no other decorations. His face was covered with a mask that covered his picturesque appearance. Only a pair of black glass eyes, a delicate chin, and thin pursed lips were revealed. The candlelight flickered in his eyes, flowing with light. Other than that, his skin was covered by his clothes. Looking down, only a pair of slender fingers were on the file. It was a hand that was more beautiful than a woman's. It was like porcelain. In the night, it seemed to have a flowing luster. Just by sitting there, one could feel his elegance and grace with just a glance and a movement. She couldn't help being dazed. Xiao Su didn't wait for her reply for a long time. He couldn't help but search her eyes. When he saw the infatuation in her eyes, the corners of his mouth naturally hooked up. "Come here." He seemed to be able to capture her soul. With just one sentence, she couldn't help but walk towards him. When she walked in front of him, Xiao Su pointed at the bowl of hot soup. "Eat this and then go to sleep." Chu Qingyan glanced at it and crossed her arms. "That's for people who stay up all night to eat." Xiao Su didn't persuade her. "It's getting late. You should go back early." When Chu Qingyan heard this, she immediately moved a chair from the side and sat beside him. She supported herself on the table with both hands and smiled slyly. "I'll accompany you tonight. Don't mess around." Xiao Su frowned. "I'm serious." Chu Qingyan didn't pester endlessly like before. Instead, she said each word seriously. Xiao Su looked into her pair of lively eyes and saw the persistence. In the end, he casually took a file and placed it in front of her. "Ask me if you don't understand." Chu Qingyan then revealed a smug smile. "Yes, my general." Xiao Su was amused by her teasing. He shook his head helplessly. He really got himself a clown. However, he really needed this clown. "All right, we'll both stay up all night and eat one piece each." She took the green bean cake from the side and stuffed it into his mouth when he lowered his head. When he turned back to look at her disapprovingly, she smiled innocently. Next, the two of them quietly read. Other than the crackling of the candlelight, there was only the sound of pages being flipped. After an unknown amount of time, Xiao Su put down a file. He turned his head to look at the person beside him who was so quiet. However, he only saw the side of her face lying on the table. Her skin was creamy and her face was powdered. Her eyes were closed and her eyelashes were long and curly, casting a shadow under the light. The corners of her mouth were slightly curved. It was a pure smile, but it faintly revealed a seductive charm. Xiao Su took off his coat and covered her body. His gaze stayed on her body for a while before moving away. Tonight, when he was looking through the files, he found that the situation of the three armies was worse than he had expected. There were good and bad people mixed together and their strength was much weaker than before. He suddenly had a lot of uncertainties about this war. At this time, the appearance of the little fellow had unknowingly calmed down the anxiety in his heart. At this time, when he heard her long breathing, his heart had calmed down a lot. He picked up the file again and seriously read it. Chapter 895. That night, Chu Qingyan did not sleep well. She had another nightmare. The flames of war raged, and the person she loved the most fell in the flames. She instantly woke up with a start, her back covered in cold sweat. What greeted her eyes was a field of candlelight. She did not realize where she was. After a while, she rubbed her temples and looked around. Where's Big Ice Cube? Wasn't she accompanying him? Why did she fall asleep instead? Just as she straightened up, a piece of clothing slipped from her shoulder. She recognized that it was Big Ice Cube's clothing. Thus, she cleared her throat and called out, "Someone come." The curtain was lifted, and a person walked in. "This subordinate is here." Chu Qingyan was not surprised to see Jean Xian. "What time is it now?" Where's His Highness? It's already 5:15. His Highness is at the military drill ground. Jean Xin replied. It's already 5:15. Chu Qingyan immediately jumped up and put away her clothes. As she walked out, she said, Why didn't you call me? Jean Xin looked troubled. Before His Highness left, he told me to let you rest well, so this subordinate did not disturb you. Chu Qingyan shook her head. Who's the master here? Take me to the military drill ground first. When Chu Qingyan arrived, the huge drill ground was filled with people. She couldn't see the end of the crowd in front of her, nor could she see the end of the crowd behind her. She was shocked at the number of people in the three armies. This was the first time she had seen so many people. However, she was even more surprised by the silence. Everyone was standing upright, not daring to breathe loudly. She did not stop, but kept walking forward until she reached the stone steps. On the last step, her gaze seemed to consciously see the person standing on the stage. Dressed in silver armor, he stood upright in the dusky sky. Burning torches were set up around him. The light from the torches shone on his body, as if covering his silver armor with a layer of fiery red flames. He looked very heroic. This was the first time she saw such a cold and solemn side of him. Even his shadow on the stage was solemn. She understood that the ice cube didn't belong to her alone. He was now the core of the entire army, the hope of the entire Sichuan. Her gaze turned to Hualing, Turin, and the others beside her. At this time, they had also changed into armor and looked heroic. However, when their gazes landed on their master, they were filled with admiration. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. At this moment, the big ice cube didn't belong to her alone, but she was prouder than before. This was called sharing the glory of others. She quickly walked to Turin's side, trying to reduce her presence as much as possible. However, she also clearly felt that the atmosphere was not right. Only then did she notice the few people lying on the ground at the front of the drill ground. At this time, they were already on the verge of death. There were deputy generals and ordinary soldiers. Just as she was feeling doubtful, Big Ice Cube spoke. As a general, you should have self-discipline. As a soldier, you should follow the law. This king had just issued an order last night, yet you ignored it today. Are you dissatisfied with this king? Are you not convinced that this king is leading the three armies? His voice was as heavy as iron, like the ringing of an ancient bell, spreading throughout the entire drill ground. Everyone held their breaths, not even daring to breathe too hard. This was Sichuan's war god, the hero in the hearts of every soldier who protected their country. They couldn't be happier to be led by him, so how could they be dissatisfied? So most people looked at the people being punished on the ground with displeasure. If it wasn't for these rats, they wouldn't have been questioned by His Royal Highness. With the public's discontent, the soldiers led by the Fu family did not dare to breathe or cry out in pain. They had received orders from their superiors to not let Xiao Su have an easy time and to make things difficult for him before he could lead his troops. Therefore, when they returned, they didn't inform their subordinates to gather. Therefore, when everyone had gathered, they arrived late. They had more people, so Xiao Su did not dare punish them at this time. After all, the law could not punish the majority. However, they did not understand Xiao Su. He was famous for being strict, so when they arrived, a row of soldiers holding military rods was already waiting for them. Every time they were hit, their skin would split open and their flesh would be torn open. They had thought that his actions would shake the morale of the soldiers, but unexpectedly, they had aroused the public's anger. They had wanted to sow discord, but they had been kicked out of the situation and felt the silent rebuke of the crowd. So when Xiao Su questioned them, the soldiers of the Fu family all lowered their heads. Although they were unwilling, they could not directly confront him at this time. After being punished by the military law, they realized that he now had a large number of soldiers. If he wanted to kill them, it would only be a matter of moving his fingers. They immediately gritted their teeth and did not dare to make a sound. Xiao Su looked away mockingly. If they had dared to directly challenge him at this time, he would have treated them differently. Now, it seemed that they were just cowards who could be swayed by the wind. Since there are no objections, then this king must reiterate one thing. In the face of a great enemy, all of you must unite as one and twist into a rope. If it's like what you've presented in the dossiers and fight on your own, then the enemy won't need to spend too much effort to crush you. Xiao Su's gaze fell on the row of generals in front of him, solemn and stern. As soon as he finished speaking, the generals all lowered their heads in shame. He did not say anything more and ordered the crowd, "Generals, bring your soldiers to the four sides. Then, infantry, step out. Do not unsheathe your weapons. Divide them into two sides. Let me see your strength." Yes. With every step they took, Chu Qingyan felt as though the ground was shaking. So this was the principle of strength in numbers. Very quickly, she saw what was called a large-scale battle. Today, her horizons were broadened. This was a battlefield. Although it was only the tip of the iceberg, it was already shocking to her heart. She looked at the person in front of her, only to see him staring down the stage. When it was about time, he would give a new order. Cavalry, step out. Arrow formation, step out. Artillery, step out. Vanguard, step out. When each battalion retreated, they couldn't help but look at the godlike man standing on the stage, hoping to get some information from his expression. Unfortunately, his expression was still indifferent, and they couldn't see any satisfaction or dissatisfaction from him. But for some reason, when they saw him seriously observing the drill, everyone's heart calmed down. Xiao Ran sat on the side of the stage. He had a good view. Confidence came from the heart. Only then could it be shown on the face. This was something he did not see when he was leading. At this moment, his gaze fell on the stage. This was the first time he saw the three armies showing such spirit after expending their soldiers. He was shocked. But very quickly, he thought of something and looked at the person on the stage. Maybe some people were born with such charisma. They could make people submit from the bottom of their heart and then trust them. His eldest brother, who was indomitable, was the same. Chapter 896. The drill lasted all the way until evening. Xiao Su maintained his original posture and did not move an inch. Only when the battalion changed positions did they see him raise his hand. Everyone returned to their original positions and raised their heads, sincerely and worriedly waiting for his evaluation. Today's drill ends here. This king already knows your abilities. It's neither good nor bad, but it's more than enough to deal with the Southern Blue Army. What you need to do now is to rebuild your faith. A few defeats do not mean anything. It was clearly just a few ordinary words, but when they came out of Xiao Su's mouth, it gave the army an invisible motivation. Each of them let out a sigh of relief, and then, their spirits were shaken, and their backs straightened even more. The King of England was right. The Southern Blue Army was only a so-so. As long as they fought this battle with all their heart, they would definitely be able to drive them out. Tonight, except for the battalion in charge of patrolling, rest well. Tomorrow, we will set off. Xiao Su did not say anything else and waved his hand to dismiss everyone. Compared to the uncertainty they felt when they came, everyone's footsteps were a bit more resolute. Xiao Su's eyes were light. This was the effect he wanted. Just as Chu Qingyan was about to take advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to look for him, a figure arrived before her. "Eldest brother, when do you think I will be as outstanding as you?" Xiao Ran looked up at him with a serious look of inquiry. Xiao Su heard him and looked at him, but his gaze went past him and looked at the setting sun in the sky. The morning glow was very beautiful, like a burning flame. Some people do not need to learn how to march and fight. They do not need to do everything to the extreme. As long as they have the world in mind, love the people, know how to use people well, do not listen and believe only one side, and be close to virtuous ministers and stay away from those who are unscrupulous, then there will be many outstanding talents and soldiers who will risk their lives for him, protect the country, and spill their blood on the land. Xiao Ran looked at him blankly. He felt that this answer was not what he wanted, but he rarely saw his eldest brother speak to him so seriously. It was not only because the armor on his body was too dazzling that he suddenly could not see the person in front of him clearly. However, after a long time, he realized that he had made a terrible mistake. As he sat alone on a tall building and looked up at the stars, he suddenly recalled the words that his eldest brother had said to him today. Only then did he realize his mistake. It turned out that his eldest brother had no intention of competing with him for the position of crown prince. He had made his stance clear to him from the very beginning. But at that time, he was too stupid to understand the meaning behind his words. Xiao Su did not expect him to understand now. He was still young, and his shoulders were not strong enough to carry heavy responsibilities, so Xiao Su changed the topic. This morning, I saw people coming from Jingdo. Presumably, father wants to summon you back. Tomorrow, when we break camp, you can go back to the palace. I will send soldiers to escort you. Hearing these words, Xiaoran felt bitter in his mouth. He wanted to fight to stay by his eldest brother's side. In the past, he had only been an armchair strategist. Although he had experienced a few battles and more or less learned some experience, it was far from enough. Eldest brother was a good teacher. If he could stay by his side, he would definitely be able to grow quickly. Unfortunately, his father's edict, his mother's insistence, and his injuries made it impossible for him to cause trouble for his eldest brother. In the end, he gave up. Eldest brother, sometimes I feel that as a member of the imperial family, I have no choice. Xiao Ran smiled sadly. Xiao Su looked deeply at him. Since we were born, we do not have the right to be willful. As if saying these words was a bit heavy, Xiao Su paused for a moment. You have already sat for a day. Go back. Xiao Ran was silent. Eldest brother was right. Others only saw their bright and beautiful side, but did not know how heavy the responsibilities they shouldered were. Eldest brother, you can keep the people. Don't worry about me. I will reach Jingdo safely. Xiao Ran said to him before leaving. Xiao Su nodded. Xiao Ran was no longer a child. He did not need to worry. As he turned, Xiao Ran saw Chu Qingyan standing to the side. Her red dress fluttered and was particularly eye-catching. He stepped forward and clasped her wrist. His tone was a bit emotional. Chu Qingyan, it's good to see you. Come with me. Chu Qingyan frowned and looked at his hand. They had only met once. Was it really okay to touch her like this? But before she could break free, the other had already pulled her away. TSK, Xiao Su's gaze landed on their intertwined hands and narrowed his eyes. But someone quickly came forward to report the matter. He could not help but look away. When he looked in that direction again, the two had already disappeared. Where is Ayan? Xiao Su asked Hualing beside him. She seems to have gone to 4th Wangzi's tent. Jin Xian and Su Yi have already followed. Master, you can rest assured. Hualing hurriedly replied, thinking that his master was worried about the little princess's safety. Xiao Su was silent for a moment before responding. Then he led his people to the main tent. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already been dragged into Xiao Ran's tent. When he let go, she finally regained her freedom. With their skills, Chu Qingyan only needed to use a bit of force to break free of his hand. But seeing that he was injured, she did not move. She did not think that an injured person would be so strong. Her wrist was already red. When Xiao Ran let go, he muttered in his heart. This Chu Qingyan was like a little girl. Her wrist was so thin that it seemed like he would break it if he used any force. But he did not think too much about it. He walked into the depths of the tent and under Chu Qingyan's confused gaze, he pulled out a large wooden chest. Chu Qingyan did not know what he was doing, but she still went forward to help. When the wooden chest was dragged to the center, Xiao Ran took a deep breath. Maybe it was because of his wound, he couldn't help but cough a few times. His expression was a bit conflicted. Are you okay? Chu Qingyan saw that his face had turned pale again. She couldn't help but ask. It's nothing. It's just a small injury. Xiao Ran waved his hand, not caring at all. Chu Qingyan sneered in her heart. He wanted to keep up appearances so that he could suffer. Then she patted the wooden chest and asked curiously, "What are these?" "They're quite heavy." As soon as she said that, she inadvertently saw a suspicious blush from his cheeks to his ears. She was a bit surprised. "Do you have a fever?" She knew that if a sword wound was not treated properly, it would be easy to have a high fever. As she said that, she naturally wanted to reach out to feel his forehead. But when her hand was in mid-air, she immediately retracted it. She suddenly remembered that in ancient times, men and women were not allowed to touch each other. She really had not changed this habit of hers after being with Big Ice for so long. And Xiao Ran's expression was already unnatural because of her question just now. He was afraid that she would notice that something was wrong with him. When he saw that she had misunderstood, he heaved a sigh of relief. He did not notice that she had retracted her hand halfway. He took a deep breath and then slowly said, as if he was telling a secret to someone. "These are the birthday gifts I prepared for Qingyan. To be exact, I've been preparing them for 4 years. Chapter 897. Xiao Ran's words successfully stunned Chu Qingyan. He had prepared this for her for 4 years as a birthday present. While she was still in disbelief, Xiao Ran did not give her any time to react. With one hand covering the wound on his chest, he bent down strenuously and knelt on the ground on one knee. He reached for the buckle with one hand, then used his fingers to open the lid. Chu Qingyan could not help but look over, and the things inside entered her eyes. Because Xiao Ran's body was blocking her view, she could only see part of it. But just part of it was enough to shock her. There were wooden dolls, precious luminous pearls, flower lanterns, paper umbrellas. She recognized some of them, but there were also some that she had never seen before. Xiao Ran picked up a kite. It looked a little clumsy. He smiled embarrassedly. "This is the first time I've made a kite. Isn't it ugly?" For years ago, when he was walking in the suburbs, he saw many children flying kites on the grass. He thought that if Qingyan was here, she would probably like this thing. So, he got someone to buy one back. He followed the instructions, but unfortunately, his skills were not very good. He could barely fly. Chu Qingyan looked at the kite. It was a butterfly, but the bamboo was not done properly, so it looked a little loose. But in her eyes, it was more beautiful than any kite she had ever seen. "No, it's very beautiful. I thought I would be able to fly it with her this spring. I'm afraid I'll have to wait until next year." He smiled and put it down. Then, Xiao Ran picked up a wooden doll. His gentle gaze fell on it, as if he was looking at something through it. When Qingyan left the capital, she had no choice. She left in a hurry. "I gave her a wooden doll that I made myself. But later, I thought it didn't look good, so I made a new one. When the time comes, I'll change it back to the original one." That puppet was indeed much more exquisite than the first one, but Chu Qingyan still said, "You're very thoughtful." Receiving the praise, Xiao Ran rubbed the back of his head, his expression suddenly becoming shy. "I made these myself, or I found them among the common folk. I know that she doesn't like the restrictions of the palace, and doesn't like those rare treasures. She only likes things with the common folk flavor, so I have been collecting them for her these past few years. But there's so much, it's probably enough to give to her for several lifetimes." Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue. She was simply dazzled by the sight. She was too surprised. Xiao Ran scratched his head, feeling a little embarrassed. "I didn't think too much about it. I bought whatever I saw for her, or made it myself." He paused for a moment, then looked up at Chu Qingyan. "Chu Yan, do you think Qingyan will like the gift I prepared for her?" The youth was half kneeling on the ground, holding a multicolored shuttlecock in his hand. He turned to look at her. His face was like jade, his lips were red, and his teeth were white. What a handsome youth. At this time, he asked anxiously, his amber eyes hiding anticipation and nervousness, making people feel pity for him. Chu Qingyan sighed softly. How fortunate was she to be able to have such a friend treat her wholeheartedly. She nodded solemnly. I think that Miss Chu will like all of these things when she sees them. Although he knew that she couldn't represent Qingyan, he didn't know why, but when he heard her words, his hanging heart settled down. Then Chu Qingyan, I have a favor to ask of you. Can you help me deliver this box of gifts to Qingyan? He stood up and asked sincerely. Chu Qingyan felt this was a little strange. Why don't you personally deliver these things? Why do you need someone else's help? As soon as her voice fell, she saw a bitter smile appear on Xiao Ran's face. I have many people protecting me, but they are not loyal to me. My mother does not allow me to be too close to my eldest brother, so the things that I send out will return to me. Chu Qingyan understood. Consort you had always forbidden him from interacting with the ice block, so she didn't like her. Alright, I'll help you take care of these things. Hearing her straightforward answer, Xiao Ran couldn't help revealing a smile. Chu Qingyan was dazzled by his smile. He didn't hide it, he didn't restrain it. It was a simple smile of gratitude, just like a white lotus blooming in the summer, pure and flawless. Many years later, when she recalled this scene, she couldn't help but sigh. That pure youth. Thank you, Chu Yen. Xiao Ran said gratefully. Chu Qingyan smiled, you're welcome. At this time, there were already people talking outside the tent. Your Highness, it's getting late. You should drink your medicine and rest. Xiao Ran's smile disappeared and he returned to his cold and cheerless appearance. Chu Qingyan knew that she had to leave, so she had Jean Xian and Su Yi come in to help her move the box. Before she left, she seemed to remember something and turned to look at the person standing under the candlelight. Miss Chu from 4 years ago, how much do you remember? These words made Xiao Ran's mind flash. He couldn't help but think of the young girl who had stolen his eldest brother, the young girl who had been poisoned to death by his pastries, the young girl who had angered him half to death, the young girl who couldn't refute him. Her smile and voice flashed in his mind. As long as it's related to her, I remember it. He smiled confidently. Is that so? Chu Qingyan lowered her eyes. If she were to stand in front of you today, would you still be able to recognize her? Xiao Ran smiled confidently, of course. Chu Qingyan raised her eyes and looked at him deeply, then she cupped her hands and bid him farewell. Xiao Ran felt that her last glance at him was somewhat meaningful, but in the end, he remembered that the gift he had carefully prepared would soon be in Qingyan's hands, so he forgot about this little episode. After walking out of the tent, Chu Qingyan turned to look in the direction of the bright lights and shook her head. Even so, you still didn't recognize me. Her low voice hid her sigh. She didn't stay for long and walked back to her tent. When she lifted the curtain, she saw a mountain of medicinal herbs and Qingyan Luo who was buried in them. Did I go to the wrong place? Isn't this where I'm staying tonight? She pursed her lips. Qingyan Luo raised her head when she heard that. There was an unknown medicinal herb stuck in her hair. Oh, Wu Ling came over just now and moved your luggage to King of England's tent. He said it was an order from your big ice cube. Ah. Chu Qingyan was baffled. Didn't we agree to stay in the same tent? Why did he change his mind at the last minute? She was about to continue writing the list of medicinal herbs when she heard that. She couldn't help but look at Chu Qingyan gloatingly. Speaking of which, did you offend your big ice cube? Otherwise, based on his ruthless personality, he wouldn't have summoned you to his side at this time. After all, with your identity, he has to avoid suspicion. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. Why would I offend him for no reason? You're thinking too much. Alright, then I won't talk to you anymore. It's getting late, so I won't send you off. Qingyan Luo waved her hand at her and continued to bury her head and ignore her. Chu Qingyan was disheartened. She lowered her head and walked towards Big Ice Cube's tent. Chapter 898. When Chu Qingyan brought the wooden box into the tent, there was no one inside. After asking the soldiers, she found out that Big Ice Cube had not returned yet. She stopped questioning and pulled the wooden box to find a place to rest. Then, she opened the box and took out the things inside one by one, looking at them seriously. No one had ever prepared a box of gifts for her with so much care. She was pleasantly surprised and touched. When Xiao Su returned, he saw the person sitting on the ground, hugging a pile of things and sighing. He took off his armor and asked casually, "What are you doing?" When the person who was addicted heard this, she was shocked at first. When she turned her head and saw that it was him, she jumped up from the ground and moved in front of him, showing him the things in her arms. "These are the gifts that Xiao Ran prepared for me. There's a whole box of them. Don't you think he's very thoughtful?" Chu Qingyan was so focused on showing off the treasures that she did not notice that the expression of the person in front of her changed because of her words. Then, it quickly returned to normal. "He's indeed very thoughtful," Xiao Su calmly replied. After getting this answer, she went back to sitting on the ground in satisfaction. She touched here and there, as if she could not bear to part with them. "I don't think I've seen you cherish the gifts I gave you so much." Xiao Su looked at her actions and said with a hint of jealousy in his voice. Chu Qingyan did not understand the jealousy in a certain someone's heart and answered with a smile. "Isn't this different? You're the person I care about. We see each other day and night, so it's fine if we hide our feelings in our hearts. Anyway, you know it. Just like how I treat you well and how you treat me well, we both take it for granted. But Xiao Ran is my friend, so this is different. It's rare for a friend to be able to do this. This makes me very touched." When he heard the words, "take it for granted," he felt very comfortable. Thus, he slowly walked to the couch. As Chu Qingyan spoke, she suddenly rolled her eyes and looked at the people behind her with a bright smile. She thought she was virtuous and said, "Big Ice Block, it seems that Xiao Ran is not married yet. When we return to Jiangnan, how about we help him arrange a marriage? Jiangnan's women are both beautiful and intelligent. He should like them." Xiao Su's footsteps paused as the corners of his mouth curled up in a strange arc. From his sparkling eyes, one could tell that he was in a good mood. However, his tone was still calm. "I'm afraid we can't decide on his marriage." When Chu Qingyan heard this, she slapped her forehead in realization. "I almost forgot. His mother is a powerful character. She definitely won't ask for our help. Otherwise, she might think that we're plotting something. I was so happy that I became muddle-headed." Xiao Su smiled. He sat on the couch and didn't answer. As the older brother, he had already felt Xiao Ran's feelings. For years ago, he thought that this younger brother of his was just a child and didn't take it to heart. He didn't expect that after so many years, he still missed the little fellow so much. It could be said that his feelings were deeply rooted. If it wasn't for the impending war and his serious injuries, he would have made things clear to him so that he could focus on proper matters. The little fellow now only treated Xiao Ran as a friend and hadn't discovered his feelings. If she knew, in order to avoid arousing suspicion, she would probably stay far away from Xiao Ran. In reality, the little fellow didn't have many friends. That was why he didn't restrict her interactions with Higashio Motetsu. Even if he discovered that there was something wrong with Higashio Motetsu, he tolerated it to the greatest extent. He hoped that when the time came, Xiao Ran wouldn't be unable to be friends. Perhaps it was the silence behind her that made Chu Qingyan have a long-winded thought. "Big Ice Cube, do you think this peach blossom is pretty?" She just happened to turn to a book. Opening it, she found a peach blossom inside. She snorted in wonder. "I didn't expect him to be able to make bookmarks. But this peach blossom as a bookmark seems a bit difficult for the peach blossom." Xiao Su's gaze followed her serious question. He saw the flower between the pages of the book. Although the flowers and leaves were wrinkled due to the loss of moisture, it wasn't difficult to see its beauty on the branches. He nodded lightly. Chu Qingyan received a response and continued to flip through the book. But for some reason, she suddenly felt dull and a thought jumped into her mind. She tilted her head and looked at the person sitting on the bed with her chin in her hand. She said seriously and expectantly. Big Ice Cube, let me ask you. If I didn't see you for 4 years, would you recognize me? He knew that her question was about Xiao Ran. What do you think? Xiao Su looked at her intently. Chu Qingyan thought hard for a while. I think you would. Don't ask me why. My intuition tells me that you would recognize me. Xiao Su's lips curled up. Of course. No matter if it's the you from 4 years ago or the you from 4 years later, I would recognize you. The reason is very simple. I don't use my eyes to see people. I use my heart. He pointed to his heart. I knew it. Chu Qingyan smiled proudly. If it was the big ice cube from 4 years ago or the big ice cube from 4 years later, she would also be able to recognize him at a glance. She believed that there would always be a thread connecting people whose hearts and minds were connected. However, she quickly scrunched up her little face. Then why can't Xiao Ran recognize me? I don't think there's any difference between 4 years ago and now. I can recognize him at a glance. He just has his facial features. Isn't it the same for me? When Xiao Su heard this, he waved at her. She immediately got up from the ground and ran towards him, throwing herself into his arms. She had wanted to do this since this morning. Xiao Su saw a small whirlwind pouncing towards him. He subconsciously opened his arms to catch her. How old are you? You're still so clumsy. I'm only like this to you. She protested. Xiao Su didn't say anything this time. He gently embraced her. Big Ice Cube, why do you think? Could it be that Xiao Ran has already forgotten what I look like? Chu Qingyan returned to the main topic. Xiao Su stroked her back, his voice calm. Not everyone is like me, so it's not strange. But this question isn't important. As long as he still cares about you, the friendship is still there. He wasn't good at comforting people, especially when the person this little fellow was worried about was not only his younger brother, but also his love rival. Chu Qingyan was suddenly enlightened. She flipped open the peach blossom again. That's right. Why should I be so serious? When the time is right next time, I'll reveal my identity. I hope he won't be shocked at that time. As she spoke, the petals fell to the ground along with the pages of the book. Chu Qingyan hurriedly squatted down to pick them up. However, they were already stained with dust. She accidentally broke them. I'm so clumsy. She was a little annoyed. Xiao Su patted her head lightly. Don't blame yourself. Rest early. You have to wake up early tomorrow. Chu Qingyan subconsciously nodded. After keeping the gift and closing the box, she suddenly remembered something very important. There was only one bed in this tent. Where would she sleep? Chapter 899. In the military camp, there were many things that had to be done. Thus, Xiao Su changed his clothes and casually cleaned himself up. He walked over and saw her standing there with a hesitant expression. Aren't you going to change your clothes and rest? Xiao Su said casually. Chu Qingyan shuddered when she heard this. She twisted her fingers and lowered her head to steal a glance at the bed. Although it was not as big as the one in the residence, it looked big enough. However, Big Ice Cube, there seems to be only one bed here. Okay, you sleep on the bed. I still want to read the file. Xiao Su did not understand the meaning behind her words and walked to the couch. She immediately looked up with a puzzled expression. Aren't you going to sleep on the bed? Was he going to sit on the couch for the whole night? Xiao Su picked up the file and turned to her when he heard her words. There was a faint light in his eyes. Are you inviting me? Chu Qingyan was so frightened that she waved her hands repeatedly. I didn't mean that. Xiao Su shook his head and smiled helplessly. Go to sleep. The bed is big enough. You can turn over however you want. No one will fight with you. His words were an indirect answer to her earlier question. Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief, but for some reason, she felt a little unhappy. She was a living person, no, a great beauty standing in front of him. How could he be so undistracted? Did he mean that she was not charming at all? Xiao Su naturally did not know what she was thinking. He sat on the couch and focused on reading. Chu Qingyan first changed her clothes behind the temporary curtain, washed up, and climbed onto the couch. The mattress had a damp smell and the bedboard was very hard. It was very uncomfortable when she lay down. However, it was already very good to have a place to sleep at this time. She was flexible and did not fuss about it. However, she was not very sleepy at this time. She remembered something and sat up, hugging the quilt. Big Ice Cube, I can sleep with Yenluo tonight. That way, you can also have a good sleep. You still have to get up early tomorrow to break camp. She thought that sleeping anywhere was not as comfortable as sleeping on the bed. There's no need. You don't have to do that. Go to sleep. Xiao Su was still focused on the file. There was a wolf here eyeing the little fellow covetously, so it was better for him to keep her under his nose. Xiao Ran, who was drinking medicine, expressed his dissatisfaction. He didn't even know that Qing Yan was a woman dressed as a man, so he innocently took the blame of the wolf. He felt wronged. Hearing the decisiveness in his words, she did not dwell on this issue any longer. She hugged her calves with both hands, placed her chin on her knees, and stared at him without blinking. Ever since they left Jiangnan, the mask on Big Ice Cube's face had never been taken off. The firelight shone on him, making him look especially handsome in her eyes. She thought happily. She was the only one who could see the Big Ice Cube's face. This kind of exclusivity made her very satisfied. Although the little fellow opposite him didn't speak, her eyes drifted over, making him unable to concentrate on reading. He looked up and caught her gaze. He thought she would avoid it, but unexpectedly, she smiled at him generously. Can't sleep. How can I sleep soundly when you stay up all night and work hard? Chu Qingyan scratched her hair and looked at him innocently. Xiao Su sighed. Actually, with her here, he couldn't read the dossiers in peace. The tent was only so big, and the faint fragrance from her body surrounded him, making it difficult for him to concentrate. He was looking for trouble for himself. Then I won't read it tonight. I'm going to sleep. Xiao Su put down the file and rubbed his eyebrows. He had hardly rested for the past 2 days, so he looked a little tired. After he finished speaking, he blew out the candlelight. In an instant, darkness enveloped them, and only the light from the fire outside faintly shone in. Chu Qingyan heard the rustling of clothes and knew that he was half lying on the bed. She hesitated for a moment. Big Ice Cube, do you want to come over? The bed here is very big. Ian, you're inviting a wolf into the house. She heard his light laughter in the darkness. She muttered, what do you mean by inviting a wolf into the house? We're already in the same tent, and you're the one who called me over. Yes, I'm inviting you, the little wolf, into the house. His deep voice was especially seductive in this night. She was almost mesmerized by his voice and forgot to refute him. Just as she was wringing her hands and sulking over her poor self-control, there was another rustling sound. Unlike before, this sound was right next to her ear. Soon, the bed sank. Before she could react, she felt someone lift the blanket and lie down beside her. You're not, the sudden proximity of a man's scent made her speak incoherently. If I don't do as you wish, I'm afraid neither of us will have peace tonight. Xiao Su smiled helplessly, but if one listened carefully, they could feel the deep affection in his smile. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose and did not speak again. Xiao Su felt that she had also laid down. He reached out to pull the blanket over her and then closed his eyes. But after a while, he felt a soft hand caress his face. He could not help but open his eyes. He was about to take it down and tell her not to mess around. A man and a woman in a bed together, and it was also his beloved, how could he not feel anything? It was just that the situation did not allow it, and with his strong self-control, he was able to suppress the surging in his body. But at this moment, the little fellow's initiative almost made him fall short. But that pair of small hands had already touched the acupuncture points on both sides of his cheeks. Her fingers paused for a moment, and then she rubbed with moderate strength. Xiao Su's raised hand froze in midair, and then he put it down. I saw that you weren't feeling well, so I rubbed it for you. You should sleep first. Her gentle and considerate voice sounded in his ear. Xiao Su's expression inadvertently softened. He wanted to say something, but her sweet scent filled his nose. Her delicate fingertips pressed against his forehead and gently massaged it, making him gradually relax. Soon, he was overcome by drowsiness. Hearing his shallow breathing, Chu Qingyan smiled gently, but her hands did not stop. The night was very cold, and her fingers were almost stiff. After an unknown amount of time, she also became sleepy. She withdrew her hand and shrank into his embrace, planning to sleep. In a daze, it seemed like someone was holding her cold hands, and then she quickly warmed up. Southern Sung Army Camp. Your Highness, our ambush has failed. Lin Yu is dead, and we've lost half of our people. Xiao Su has already taken over Xiao Ran's position and is currently in the Sichuan army camp. The person who appeared on the mountain with the thick-browed man was currently standing in the main tent to report. Lin Yu was killed. Pang Huang narrowed his eyes, feeling a bit of disbelief. Yes, he was killed by a youth by Xiao Su's side with an arrow that pierced his heart. Good, good, good. Killing my beloved general and injuring my elites. It seems like there's another debt between this prince and Xiao Su. Pang Huang revealed a smile that was not a smile, but it made people's hairs stand on end. Then Crown Prince, what should we do next? Let's wait and see. This prince has already figured out Xiao Su's tactics from the past few years. Now we just need to wait for him to make a move. This way, this prince will be able to counter it. Pang Huang revealed a sinister smile. Yes. Chapter 900. Early in the morning, when Chu Qingyan woke up, the bed beside her was already empty. She rubbed her eyes, and the big ice cube was gone again. Remembering that today was the day to break camp, she immediately got up to wash up. Just as she tied her hair up, Jean Xian came in. She turned her head and saw the fiery red battle suit in his hands. She couldn't help but be puzzled. His Highness isn't here. Jean Xian gave a rare smile. This is the battle suit that His Highness asked someone to make. It's for you. Chu Qingyan jumped over in surprise. She reached out and flipped through the battle suit in his hands. Red cloak, red armor, only the boots were black. She fell in love with this set of battle suit at first glance. She quickly took it and waved her hand to let him leave. She couldn't wait to put it on. After fastening the last belt and stepping on the soft boots, Chu Qingyan heard the sound of the curtain being lifted. She thought that Jean Xian had come in, so she said without turning her head, "Wait a moment, I'll put on the helmet." There was no sound behind her, so Chu Qingyan didn't care. After she finished dressing up, she turned around with a smile. If only there was a mirror, she would know whether she looked good or not. Then when she saw the person behind her leaning against the table and looking at her, she was stunned. Then she smiled even more happily. Why did you come back? When Xiao Su's gaze met her smiling face, he couldn't help but slowly straighten his back. The person in front of him was bright and dazzling. Her eyes were like spring water. She was wearing a battle suit with a crimson jade belt around her slender waist. He couldn't see her feminine posture. Her jet black hair was tied up and covered by a fitting helmet, covering her bright and clean forehead. Her eyebrows were like autumn water, and the corners of her eyes were raised. She looked cunning and quick-witted. At a glance, her entire person was neat and tidy, adding a trace of heroic spirit compared to usual. Handsome eyebrows and slender eyes, she looked spirited. Her appearance was so good that it made one forget about vulgarity. He had seen her dress up so many times, but he was stunned by her every time. She waited for a long time, but he didn't reply. She could only feel his gaze fixated on her body. For a moment, she lost her confidence and awkwardly tugged at her clothes. Do I look bad? Xiao Ran came back to his senses. Seeing her depressed expression, he sighed in his heart. The little fellow's words would make many people ashamed. He walked closer to her and tidied her clothes. He said helplessly, I'm starting to regret getting someone to make you a battle suit. Huh? She was puzzled. Forget it. Since you've already worn it, then so be it. Remember, don't attract any more peach blossoms home. It was too late to change into a battle suit now. Besides, the little fellow's appearance was already like this. No matter how he changed, he could not hide it. He could only remind her. Chu Qingyan was confused by his words. She couldn't help but smile. Yes, General. But in the end, she pointed at the peach blossoms behind her and hugged her big ice cube's arm. She wanted to cry, but no tears came out. I was clearly far away, how could I still attract them back? Big ice cube, I didn't do it on purpose. Preparing to dismantle the camp, Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan walked out. At this time, an unfamiliar young deputy general walked over. Master, the people have been gathered. Xiao Su nodded, if you need any weapons, then go to the storeroom to get them. Yes. That young deputy general immediately turned and left. Behind him were 4 or 5 capable soldiers. Just these people were more valiant and heroic than the soldiers she saw on the military field. Chu Qingyan was a bit curious, this deputy general didn't seem to appear in the camp the day before yesterday. He was one of my previous subordinates. He was transferred here yesterday. Xiao Su's eyes flashed with a trace of sorrow, but it quickly disappeared. At this time, someone else came to ask for orders, so he focused on dealing with the others. Chu Qingyan knew that he was busy, so she moved to the side to stand with Hualing, that person is called Fang Lu. He followed Master when you were leading the army. Master gave him a group of 10,000 elites to lead. Hualing's voice sounded in her ears. Although she didn't know why he would suddenly mention this, she knew that the great spirits didn't like to waste words. She thought about it and asked, then why didn't I see him 2 days ago? For a soldier with such a large army, he should have appeared many times. As soon as her voice fell, she saw a rare trace of ridicule appear on Hualing's face. She only heard him say in a cold voice. 5 years ago, Master returned after a victory. His Majesty used the excuse that he wasn't at the border as an excuse to put these 10,000 elite soldiers under the command of a general under the Fu family named Fu Yan. 4 years ago, Master handed over his military power and left for Lian City. The following month, His Majesty secretly gave an order for Lu Lu and Fang to scatter these 10,000 elite soldiers into various camps in Sichuan. Chu Qingyan was stunned hearing this. The Sichuan emperor wanted to break apart the big ice cube's power. Following this, a mouthful of anger surged from her heart to her throat. She felt her entire body tremble. This was anger. Hualing saw that her face was ice cold and his eyes were also filled with fire. Little princess, did you know? Those 10,000 elite soldiers were Master's last line of defense for the border. If other countries invaded, with Fang Lu's men, they would be able to hold on for at least a month. At that time, when the reinforcements arrive, they would be able to protect the border. It's a pity that Master's good intentions were destroyed like this. If it wasn't like this, how could Nansung only spend 3 days to break through the border and invade our country? She tightly clenched her fists and her expression was a bit ugly. As a general, he could have tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of soldiers under his command. Not just anyone could train a group of elite soldiers. Moreover, in the eyes of the Big Ice Cube, the requirements for elite soldiers were very strict. They had to know how to change their identity at any time. They had to be able to switch between cavalry, archers, vanguards, artillery, and ambushers. It was already very impressive for a normal person to train 100 elite soldiers, not to mention 10,000. Sichuan Emperor had eyes but failed to recognize a pearl. He only thought of how to reduce his son's power without caring about the consequences. Now, he was suffering the consequences of his own actions. However, he still needed his son who had dealt with all kinds of blows in the past to clean up the mess. Chu Qingyan didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. In the end, she could only sigh silently. The big ice cube had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to have this kind of imperial father. Then who was Fang Lu? Chu Qingyan lowered her voice to ask. Huoling smiled in relief. Although Fu Yan has been making things difficult for Fang Lu and demoted him to the status of a city guard, fortunately he didn't leave the border. Yesterday, Master ordered this subordinate to find him and let him try his best to contact the scattered elite soldiers of the 3 armies. Speaking to hear, Huoling's smile carried a touch of bitterness. Now, only a few hundred people have been found. There is no news of the others. For years have passed and those people have been pushed aside. I don't know where they have been arranged. Hopeless waiting and endless bullying. I don't know if those fierce men of the past can withstand these 4 years of loneliness. Although she didn't have the experience of Huoling and the others in the past few years to fight the war with these elite soldiers, she could feel the anger and sadness in Huoling's words. Chapter 901. Seeing Chu Qingyan remain silent, it was like her entire body had been lit on fire, making a ci sound. Huoling saw that this was bad. Would the little princess consort's anger be completely ignited? He did not want to be scolded by his master. So he immediately explained. Little princess consort, this subordinate is telling you this not to make you feel depressed, but to have you accompany master more. He has a lot of bitterness in his heart. Chu Qingyan's heart ached. That's right, even as bystanders, they couldn't take it, not to mention Big Ice Cube. When she went to Lian City in the past, she did not hear Big Ice Cube mention that Fang Lu and the others had been transferred away. Hearing Huoling say this, she carefully thought about it and found some clues in her memories. It seemed like during that time, Big Ice Cube became very silent and would often look in the direction of the border in a lonely manner. So at that time, Big Ice Cube was feeling sad, but she did not understand. Don't worry, I will do my best to protect him. She suppressed the bitterness in her eyes and revealed a bright smile to Huoling. Huoling saw this smile that was more dazzling than the sun and felt relieved. The little princess consort was the person who would warm his master's life. As long as the little princess consort was here, his master would definitely be far away from those sad and painful matters. Then he would do his best to protect the little princess consort. At this time, Turin walked over with his horse. He looked very handsome in his battle clothes. When he saw Chu Qingyan, he was first shocked before saying with a smile, "Master's eyes aren't bad. This battle clothes suit you very well." Chu Qingyan revealed a proud smile and replied, "You're also not bad." While they were talking, the camp had already been dismantled and everyone was ready to set out. Have the vice-generals in charge of each camp count the people. We'll set out in 15 minutes. Xiao Su coldly ordered the 2 rows of vice-generals in front of him. Yes, sir. After a loud roar, the crowd quickly dispersed. Chu Qingyan also received her own battle horse. When she was about to lead it into Huoling's group, she saw a group of people walk over. The person in the lead was Xiao Ran. He walked in front of Xiao Su. His complexion was much better than the first day, but it was still very pale. He said apologetically, "Imperial brother, I have to return to the capital first. I can't stay by your side and help the people." Xiao Su patted him on the shoulder. "Be careful on the road." Xiao Ran nodded. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw a smear of red. He turned sideways and saw that it was Chu Yan. He didn't expect that there would be someone who would look so good in a battle suit. He was stunned for a moment before he walked over. "Chu Yan, I have to go, you have to pay attention to your safety." Although they have only met a few times, Xiao Ran has a good impression of her, and said with concern. Chu Qingyan nodded. Your Highness fourth prince, you also have to be careful on the road. At this time, it was unknown who said that they were going, but Chu Qingyan jumped onto the horse's back. There was already a large group of soldiers passing by. Chu Qingyan held the reins with both hands, ready to follow, but she stopped again and turned to look at the people not far away. Xiao Ran, you also take care. She waved at him, and then, as if she had unloaded a burden, she urged the horse to quickly catch up with the people in front. Xiao Ran couldn't help but smile slightly, and said goodbye in his heart. When the army all left, Xiao Ran heard an attendant whisper, "The youth beside the King of England is really unruly." He actually dared to call His Highness by his full name. Xiao Ran was slightly stunned. He didn't seem to pay attention to the way she addressed him. He only remembered the smile she raised before she left, like a dazzling sun. He shook his head and was about to leave when he suddenly stopped. Xiao Ran, you also take care. His eyes widened and his lips trembled, but he couldn't say a word as he looked in the direction the army left. A look of disbelief appeared on his thin face. Qingyan, you said that all meetings in the world are reunions after a long separation. I look forward to the day we meet again. You have to take care. For years ago, he had fiercely hugged her and said those words to her. For years later, she left him again and gave him the last words of that year. Xiao Ran, you also take care. The same scene, the same words. He seemed to have seen the deep concern in her eyes when she turned around. No wonder when he saw her, he had an inexplicable feeling of wanting to get close to her. No wonder when he heard her speak, he felt an inexplicable joy in his heart. It turns out that we have met again after a long separation, but I didn't recognize you. At this time, his subordinates had brought over the carriage and horses. Xiao Ran's eyes lit up and he immediately went forward to grab the reins, preparing to chase after the people in front of him. Even if he only knew her identity now, he still had to tell her, otherwise he wouldn't be satisfied. Fourth Prince, what do you want to do? The direction we're going is not that way. The guards immediately surrounded him. Some pulled on the reins and some blocked the way, making it impossible for Xiao Ran to go forward. All of you move out of the way, this king wants to get on the horse. Xiao Ran's eyes were red with anger, looking like a trapped beast. Your Highness, you are still injured. We have received orders from the Empress to safely escort you back to the capital. Please don't make it difficult for your subordinates. You should get on the carriage and return to the capital. Yan Shi went forward and pleaded in a sincere voice. Xiao Ran looked around and saw that all the guards were standing there with determined expressions. Even if he gave the order, they would not back down. He was the fourth prince that everyone respected in court, but he had no freedom to speak of. The eldest brother was right. They could not be willful, and they could not be willful. He raised his hand and covered his eyes, hiding the pain in his eyes in the darkness. Fourth prince, what's wrong? Did your injury relapse? Yan Shi saw that his lips were pale and immediately asked in a panic. It's nothing, my heart just hurts a little. Xiao Ran put down his hand. When he saw the light again, his eyes were confused. When it became clear, he could only see that the tail of the army had disappeared from his sight. Heartache? Yan Shi was shocked. He thought that he had some serious illness and wanted to call for a doctor, but he heard a lonely order. Yan Shi, let's go. Your Highness. Yan Shi looked at the youth in front of him in astonishment. Although he was only 16 or 17 years old, his face showed a pale expression. Xiao Ran waved his hand and did not need anyone to help him. He turned and walked towards the carriage, leaving Yan Shi with a lonely back. Yan Shi was stunned for a moment, but he quickly gave the order to set off, in case something happened to the fourth prince. Xiao Ran sat in the carriage and took out something from his sleeve. He looked at it with absent-minded eyes. Qingyan, forgive me for not recognizing you. Forgive me for not being able to find you. He touched his chest. The place where he was stabbed by the sword was burning with pain. He laughed bitterly. You've seen me in my most embarrassing state. It's really too embarrassing. He pressed the thing to his chest and whispered, Qing Yan, little girl, I will wait for you in the capital. You must protect yourself. Chapter 902. Chu Qingyan followed behind Xiao Su at a leisurely pace. At this moment, she turned around to look at the thousands of elite soldiers behind her. They were wearing different armor from the other soldiers. So these were the soldiers that Big Ice Cube had spent so much effort in nurturing. As expected, their spirit and pace were different from the others. Big Ice Cube, where are we going first? Chu Qingyan asked. The closest place to here is Jiangning County. Let's go and take it back first. Xiao Su's gaze crossed the mountaintop and looked into the distance. His gaze was somewhat heavy. Chu Qingyan nodded. Jiangning County had already been lost a month ago. If they could take it back in one battle, it would definitely boost the soldiers' morale. At this moment, a few white shadows leapt out from the haystack. Fang Lu, who had been paying close attention to the surrounding movements, immediately shouted, Your Highness, be careful. Then, he raised his spear and stabbed towards one of the white shadows. Unexpectedly, the white shadow was very agile. With a twist of its waist, it bypassed his spear and ran in the other direction. In front of them was the direction of Her Highness. Fang Lu was greatly alarmed. Just as he was about to raise his spear and chase after it, a hand stopped him. He turned around and saw that it was Turan. Turan's expression was leisurely as he said, Don't worry. That's young Master Chu's pet. It's not dangerous to Master. Only then did Fang Lu stop. He turned around and looked at the white shadows again. He saw 4 blood-red animals that looked like wolves and dogs surrounding Chu Qingyan, happily barking. What are those? It was the first time Fang Lu had seen animals with such pure fur. He was surprised and curious. Snow wolves. All 4 of them. When Turan mentioned them, his voice rose with a hint of pride. Fang Lu was even more surprised. Snow foxes were arrogant and cruel animals. They were basically irreconcilable with humans. He didn't expect them to become a human's pet. He originally thought that Chu Yan was just a subordinate that Master had nurtured by Chu Qingyan's side. His talent was shallow, so he didn't pay too much attention to him. How could he have known that he had 4 such ferocious beasts? Not just these 4, there are more. Turan pointed at the sky. Fang Lu looked in his direction and saw a tall and mighty eagle circling in the air. Its gaze was extremely sharp as it stared at their marching team. Behind it, there were a few other eagles that were just as strong as the eagle. Even the valiant general whose hands were stained with blood couldn't help but break out in cold sweat when he saw this eagle. What kind of person is this young Master Chu Qingyan? Fang Lu finally asked about Chu Qingyan's identity. Turan pondered for a moment and then said mysteriously, She's someone that Master values very much. Fang Lu scratched his head. What kind of answer was that? At this time, Chu Qingyan was helplessly taking care of Little Annoyance and the others. In the past month, Bai Yutang and the others had grown very quickly. She didn't know if it was because she had brought them out to walk, but now, they had grown taller. They were in between adolescence and adulthood. As they approached, the horses couldn't help but tremble. Fortunately, she pulled them back, otherwise she would have fallen off. Didn't I tell you to properly follow the team? Why did you pop out? Because these few were rather strange, she didn't dare to let them appear in the army. She didn't think that they would suddenly pop out. Just now, she saw Fang Lu make a move and knew that they couldn't hurt them, but she couldn't help feeling worried. Glutinous Rice Ball and the others immediately began to roll on the ground and act spoiled, as if they were complaining that they were abandoned by their master. They were the kings of the snow, how could they not be seen? Hualing was amused by these charmingly naive actions and quickly received the angry glares of Bai Yutang and the others. Just as Chu Qingyan was vexed, Xiao Su, who had been watching from the side, slowly opened his mouth, Since they want to follow, then let them follow. You just have to restrain them from hurting people. Receiving the big ice cube's permission, Chu Qingyan didn't even have time to be happy before she saw Bai Yutong and the others run in front of the big ice cube's horse and hoot. Translation: We aren't lowly animals, we won't casually hurt people. Translation: That's right, that's right. Translation: Seeing that you've pleaded for us, we'll reluctantly forgive you. Thus, after the few howls became happy, they immediately returned to their master's feet and acted cute. Seeing this scene, the corner of Fang Lu's mouth twitched. This was the first time he saw animals with such intelligence, as if they were conversing with people. What was strange was that Her Highness actually allowed them to hoot, as if she was already used to it. It was simply too mysterious. Chu Qingyan facepalmed. Not only did these few grow in size, their tempers also grew. With the company of these few, she didn't feel bored or tired during the day and night journey. As the vanguard, Xiao Su led 3,000 soldiers to a place 10 li away from Jiangning County, while the remaining 30,000 stayed behind to hasten on the journey. 2 days ago, Gao Hao, Jing Guanghui, and the other deputy generals led their soldiers to the places where the Southern Sung Army had invaded. Their mission was to contain the Southern Sung Army's advance and wait for Xiao Su to finish dealing with those cities before returning to deal with the Southern Sung Army. It was already the beginning of summer, and the mountain wind was hot and dry. Wearing the heavy and stuffy armor, Chu Qingyan wiped the sweat from her forehead and followed the big ice cube to the top of the mountain, overlooking the county at the foot of the mountain. From afar, they could see the Southern Sung flag on the city gates. Chu Qingyan subconsciously looked at the person beside her, feeling the coldness emanating from his body. No matter how magnanimous a person was, they would still be angry when their own country was occupied. Chu Qingyan tried her best to smile. Big ice cube, it's fine. We'll soon take it back and drive those invaders out. I'm not as weak as you think. Xiao Su turned to look at her, a faint smile appearing in his eyes. Gather everyone and prepare for a meeting. She was dazzled by his sparkling eyes and immediately responded, okay. Your Highness, Xiao Su has already brought people to the outskirts of Jiangning County. Rei Luo stood in front of Pang Huang and reported. How many people did he bring? Pang Huang held a pastry in his hand, but he wasn't in a hurry to eat it. His gaze fell on the pastry as if he was studying the patterns on it. He has 3,000 people at his side. 1,000 of them are former elite soldiers. Apart from the people heading to Anlong Harbor to tie us down, the remaining 30,000 are following behind. Rei Luo was holding a secret letter in his hand. When he heard his master's question, he immediately replied. Pang Huang nodded indifferently. Previously, the army was split up to attack one by one in order to make Sichuan flustered. He could take care of the west, but he couldn't take care of the east. This is very useful for Xiao Ran, a novice. Now that Xiao Su is in charge of the 3 armies, although we can't make him panic, it can be considered a great use to pin him down and prevent him from concentrating his forces. Master's chess moves were truly wonderful. Rei Luo gave a thumbs up in praise. Flattery is useless to this crown prince. Pang Huang threw the pastry in his hand onto the plate, then leaned back on the couch and glanced at him. Have you found the person behind the scenes who leaked the information to us? Chapter 903. After His Highness the Crown Prince's reminder, Rei Luo looked ashamed. He bowed and apologized. Please forgive me, Crown Prince. Our people still haven't been able to find out their identities. Every time they appear, they're very secretive. Even the carrier pigeons that were sent didn't follow them for more than 1 li before disappearing. This subordinate is incompetent. Only then did Pang Huang furrow his brows and reveal a deep expression. Ever since they planned to enter Sichuan half a year ago, someone had approached him and said they were willing to cooperate with him and help him obtain half of Sichuan's empire. The condition was that after the matter was completed, they would make him a promise. A cooperation in exchange for a light promise. It was a cheap deal. It seemed that this cooperation was very tempting. Although he held a skeptical attitude at first, the other party soon gave him a big gift. The defensive map of Sichuan's border and the timetable for changing the guards. Back then, he had used this to break through the border's most important line of defense in just a few days. However, such a smooth process made Pang Huang calculate in his heart. This person was hiding behind the scenes. If he was a Sichuan person, then this method was too bold. If he wasn't a purge, then it was terrifying that he could grasp so many secrets. Although he had obtained benefits from this cooperation, he still didn't know who the person behind the scenes was. Therefore, in order to not be controlled when the time came, he sent people to investigate in private. However, half a year had passed, and this person was still as mysterious as before. Your Highness the Crown Prince, are you worried that this person will harm us when the time comes? Rui Luo didn't see him speak, so he tried to ask. Pang Huang's face revealed a trace of coldness. In less than a year, we will be able to take over Sichuan. When the time comes, he won't be a threat to us at all. However, this crown prince doesn't like the feeling of the other party being in the dark while we're in the light. The person in control of the overall situation should be this crown prince. His Highness the Crown Prince had always been arrogant and conceited. The actions of the person behind the scenes had somewhat angered him. Rui Luo thought for a moment and continued, this subordinate feels that you don't have to worry at all. In the past 6 months, we've captured so many cities along the way and haven't seen any problems. It can be seen that when the time comes, we'll flatten Sichuan. Even if he wants to turn the tables, he won't have the ability to do so. Our southern blue has millions of mighty soldiers. Pang Huang nodded as the corners of his mouth curled up into a sly smile. You're right, we need to make the best use of everything. This crown prince still needs him to spy on Xiaosu. Your Highness is wise, Rui Luo complimented. Alright, let's not talk about such useless things. Have Lu Xiang guard Jiangning County well. Xiaosu's vanguard has already arrived and will probably make a move in the next 2 days. Don't let anyone take advantage of the situation, Pang Huang instructed. Rairo immediately asked, then do we need to send someone to support General Lu? He has 20,000 troops, more than enough to deal with Xiaosu. Tell him not to act rashly and follow this prince's orders. Pang Huang did not care at all. But the other party was Xiaosu. These words were stuck in Rui Luo's throat, but in the end, he swallowed them under His Highness the Crown Prince's confident gaze. His Highness the Crown Prince was a rare genius in the southern blue continent. Marching and fighting were not a problem for him. Rui Luo didn't think too much about it and turned to leave. Wait. Pang Huang stopped him. Does your Highness have any other orders? Rui Luo was puzzled. Xiaosu has a red-clothed young general by his side. Pang Huang tapped his fingers on the table and looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Rui Luo was stunned at first, but then he remembered who he was asking about. When he mentioned this person, Rui Luo's voice carried a trace of resentment. Yes, that person is the one who killed Lin Yu with a single arrow. He's young, but he can't be underestimated. When Lin Yu and Chu Qingyan had clashed, he had hidden in the shadows to observe. He was surprised that she was able to beat Lin Yu to the point where he couldn't retaliate. In the end, he died to her arrow. He had previously reported this to His Highness the Crown Prince, but he found that His Highness didn't seem too surprised. It was as if he was familiar with the youth. Now that he mentioned it, he was even more certain that His Highness the Crown Prince was interested in the youth. Very good. If you encounter him, leave him alive. Pang Huang waved his hand and dismissed him. Rui Luo didn't ask any more questions and left. With his fingers still on the table, Pang Huang looked into the distance. His memories returned to half a year ago when he met the youth at the foot of the Fuli mountain range. No, it was more accurate to say that it was a young girl. She was like a hibiscus rising from the water, delicate and charming. She wasn't like the women of southern blue who had thick eyebrows and large eyes. However, he had made a mistake. The beauty was like a rose with thorns and spiciness. She was like a nimble little beast. He had almost fallen into her hands several times. In the past half a year, he would think of her from time to time. That woman called Chu Qingyan. He really wanted to pull out her thorns one by one. If he could keep this kind of woman by his side, then his life would be a bit more interesting. Pang Huang put his hand behind his head. His lips curled slightly. He was in a very good mood. On a mountaintop 10 li away from Jiangning County. A topographic map of Jiangning County was spread out on a rock. This was drawn by one of Huo Ling's subordinates who was extremely good at drawing maps. He had arrived at Jiangning County 2 days ago and drawn it. Xiao Su pointed at the 4 city gates of Jiangning County and said, "Tomorrow night, the third watch will be when the enemy changes guards. Bring people and carefully sneak in through the 4 gates. Then, find a place to hide your tracks. Once the sun rises, the army will attack the city. Coordinate with them from the inside and outside and catch them off guard." This subordinate understands. Turan and the others immediately replied. Although Jiangning County was vast, its terrain was low. It was surrounded by mountains and forests on all sides, so it couldn't compare to a bustling area. It was considered a town near Sichuan and was often visited by wild beasts. However, it had the advantage of covering a large area. A single county was comparable to 2 other towns. If they could sneak in, they would be able to hide their tracks very well. Therefore, Xiao Su planned to take back this place first and use it as a place to store food and a place for backup troops. Fang Lu, Turan, Huo Ling, each of you will lead a team and enter from the east, west, and west walls. As for the remaining northern gate, before Xiao Su could finish speaking, he heard a bright voice ring out. The northern gate will be led by me. You are the main commander and should be in charge of the rear to prevent any sudden changes. Everyone heard this and looked at the person sitting quietly on the side. It was Chu Qingyan, who was wearing a bright red dress and still had a faint smile on her face. Xiao Su frowned. He was about to refute her request when Fang Lu suddenly spoke up, "Your Highness, this subordinate feels that little brother Chu is right. You still want to mobilize the army to attack the city, so you have to stay here." Huo Ling and Turan looked at each other. Although they agreed, this little brother Chu was not a normal person. He was their master's treasure. Xiao Su coldly looked at the person beside him, but she responded with a confident smile. He frowned, but in the end, he did as she wished. After deciding on the number of people, the 4 of them went to organize.